Premiering Wednesday, Beyond Westworld. The question, how do you kill a man who may be a machine? A scientific genius has built human-like robots programmed to endanger the world. He's planted a robot on a nuclear sub. The mission, locate and destroy it. Watch Beyond Westworld, premiering Wednesday at 8, 7 Central.
Heavens to Murgatroyd. It's all over even.
It's a little hot in here tonight.
Yeah, it's hot. Well, you know.
It's that attic space. Since we messed up the basement, we're not allowed to doing our...
Yeah, my mom won't let us back down in the basement.
After our dirty dancing.
Our dirty dancing. Fiasco, blood on the carpet. You can't get blood out of a white carpet, realize. Even if you use hydrogen peroxide, you can't get blood out of a white carpet. And you can't get blood out of a stucco ceiling. I said staccato. Stucco ceiling up there.
Yeah, yeah.
So now we've been relegated
it's also
to
all the black lights your parents have down there.
Yes.
Really bring out the fluids.
Yeah, exactly. So it's funny. I used to bring, all my old girlfriends would go down there. You're like, oh my gosh.
Your teeth are glowing.
You need to change that shirt. So yeah, we're up in the attic now, and we have to watch our. We can't get too crazy because if we stand, we'll probably impale our head in a nail.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess it's because the shingles.
Yeah,
I guess that's what those nails.
It's the long nails of the that just.
And then nobody ever puts like another piece of
no. Hey, my parents are trying to work at.
No, but nobody ever does that.
No, if you finish the attic, you can.
Yeah, if you finish.
But yeah,
if you like Greg Brady style. Yeah, you put a bedroom up there.
Yeah, you can do that. But a lot of times people that's why it can get so cold and so hot. But this attic fan if we turn this on, you won't hear anything. It'll be like turning on like a DC-9. And then also...
And you got to avoid the Pink Panther insulation.
Yeah, and then you put your foot through, remember, a couple months ago. So that was lovely. And then, what was it, last week? Jesus, we weren't even almost allowed back in my parents' house because last week when we tried to redo in the basement the... Raiders of the Lost Ark scene. We took my dad's watch, remember, and we took it off of it while he was sleeping with the watch on. So he almost shot us because he thought we were prowlers, and it was just just a lot of stuff.
You gotta start doing it at my house.
Yeah, I know. But we pissed your mom off too. We just make too much noise. That's the problem. Is we just get too giddy.
We get too round up.
The problem is it's so late. We're doing it. We're doing it traditional.
It's not a proper sleepover unless you wake the parents up at some point in the middle of the night.
And as well as I do that we've done that all the time, and we do that now. Our mid-30s.
When's it gonna
When's it gonna end?
When's it gonna end?
We've talked about that one before on the podcast. Just completely derailing the you're so hyper, you've sobered up, and then you're waking up the whole house.
Well, to put people that in perspective, is we were at Dion's house in the basement.
Do we need to even? I don't even remember if we even sign on anymore and say welcome to Saturday Night Movie Sleepovers.
The people know. They know where they're at.
I hope you guys know.
It's
what
not
you're
like
doing.
They're stumbling onto this on like a radio station. Like, what is this show?
Good evening.
They're downloading it.
Yeah, that's true.
But to put that in perspective, we were in the basement.
Well, I'm Dion and that's Blake.
I'm Blake. That's Dion.
Okay.
That's a Saturday Night Movie Sleepovers.
Yeah. Check it.
We're in the basement.
Yes.
Middle of the night, laughing, having a good time, having a sleepover, having a nice like early to mid-20s sleepover.
Yeah, this was post-college. Yeah, so you'd come over and, we were, I think we've said this, we told this one about 6 months ago. But yeah, you were over because we hadn't seen each other in a while because, college graduated, you went back home, I went this way. And then.
But, so the basement, then there's a first floor.
Yeah.
And then your parents are on the second floor.
Yes.
And we were still loud enough to wake your dad up.
Yeah, which I think what it was is, if you think about it, like, I think it's the hallway. So the stairs to get upstairs from the basement to the first floor, the ceiling to those stairs are the stairs to the second floor. So I bet you it carried the noise up. And his closet his head's right by the closet, and that right there, so he can hear all this,
The vent.
So, yeah, the notorious vent, and then he heard everything. So who knows what the hell we were doing down there? All the porno we were watching. all the crazy
all the USA Up All Night. We were
with what's her face and Gilbert Gottfried. What's that girl? USA Up All Night. I forget that girl's name.
That was a long time ago.
Yeah,
anyway,
I hope she's doing all right. So the problem is that we have to just watch out. So it's hot as balls in here now.
We're in the attic.
Hotter than a Wolfman's
above
Nards.
not even above the house. They put us in the attic space above the garage.
Above the garage.
So that we won't wake them up.
We're detached. We're over in the barn.
It's not even nice like Fonzie's apartment.
Yeah, it's not even. Yeah, they can't even freaking. We got some old carpeting that they carpeted some other room and they had the leftover pieces, so now they put that down and since no one vacuums it,
balancing on a couple of 2x4s.
Blake's next to the croquet set over here, and then I'm next to like some other stuff.
The croquet set over here.
I'm next to like my old skateboard and
But anyway, moving on.
Moving right along.
So last week,
yes,
our last episode, 2 weeks ago.
Yes, last 2 weeks ago.
Last 2 weeks ago
was the introduction to the fall.
Was our fall introduction, our 3rd anniversary giant size episode.
Yeah, the giant sized. Yeah, it was an extra quarter, and it was huge. That was the longest one we had done. It was 7 hours.
The longest one to date, and I don't even think we really BS'd that much on it. I think we really talked about the movie.
We really talked about the movie for at least over 3 hours. You could watch that movie twice.
And coincidentally, we're doing Harrison Ford's follow-up to that movie this week.
It's funny. We had a lot of coincidences this year because all the 87s we've picked, which was purely, and I can't emphasize that enough to our listeners, that was purely coincidental that we picked all those 87s.
It was semi-coincidental. Some of them were planned because of 87.
Yeah.
But a lot of them just ended up like happening.
Yeah, just then we're like, holy crap. But
then, let's keep going.
And then this one is the same thing where it's a happenstance that we did Raiders and now we're following Harrison's career.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of excitement, including excitement from me. I don't know about you, but there's a new Blade Runner movie coming out.
Yeah. It's out today when this podcast premieres.
So I was getting all excited.
Yeah, Blake got all excited. He said, "Let's do some Raid."
I was like, "Let's do the original Blade Runner.
Let's do some Raid Runner."
And it just kind of came into the coincidences that we did Raiders last week.
Yeah, because that wasn't planned when we picked Blade Runner to do. We mapped Blade Runner out at the beginning of the year when we sat down with our Rolodexes, and we planned out up until Halloween.
Our big desk calendar.
Yeah, we had. We physically brought our roll top desks, opened our roll top desks, and then we had our big calendars, and we were looking at
Right. What do you got for that date?
The school lunch. What are you having for lunch that day? Okay, I'm gonna have the hot.
Pizza Fridays.
Pizza Friday. I'm going to French. I hate the French bread. Okay. So we planned Blade Runner back in, I don't know when it was, because we looked at all the different
at least early
dates.
Summer, if not earlier than that.
I think it was back in
maybe spring or late winter.
Yeah, we laid everything out, and then like we said a month ago, we only picked Raiders last minute because we were toggling with 4 or 5. We're juggling what movie that would fit. Yeah. So this was happenstance that these are back to back. But
interesting, I think.
Yeah, because then we're seeing
put it in the context
of what exactly he was from one picture to the next movie, and then you see what he's doing now, 40 years ago.
Yeah. So,
good night, everybody.
All right, there we go. Blade Runner.
All right, that was
a good one.
Yeah. Remember that scene? Well, that was cool. Remember that scene where he said the memories are like raindrops? That's cool.
So Blade Runner, in a way, it's like Raiders of the Lost Ark was, I think, our most iconic movie to date that we did.
Yeah.
I think Blade Runner is like our biggest topic to date.
Bigger than Raiders, because Raiders took a lot of prep. Because
I think this is like we got the book, we got like 5 versions of the movie,
there's 7 versions of the movie. We watched every single one. Blake came over Friday. We both called out sick from work from our day jobs.
Friday morning. We've been watching Blade Runner
up the wazoo. And my mom was making us, grilled cheeses with some applesauce for lunch, and then she's making us fish sticks for dinner, and then we had some Elios last night and
some juice boxes,
keep us
hydrated.
Yeah, we had some of those. Which are those? What are those? Punch it. What do you call that?
Well, what is that? Capri Suns?
Maybe Suncoast, something like that, where it's the punch.
Yeah.
And then my dumbass is I always take the straw out and I try to punch it and I break the straw. I'm like, come on. And then I dull the straw trying to break that punch. I'm like, come on.
But for all intents and purposes,
it's a monumental topic. We've had our interns all week printing us out galores and galores
Dion
of
knows.
Xeroxes.
I usually show up with minimal notes, but I
None.
have probably the most notes I've ever had for the show.
Yeah, Blake's got 2 pages of paper. 2 pages of paper. Dion's brought with him
but for
Encyclopedia Britannica.
everybody following at home,
Yeah.
we decided that we were going to
This is hard.
loosely base this podcast on the international theatrical cut.
Of 82. So there's the U.S. theatrical cut, and then there was the international cut, and then that international cut is the cut that was then subsequently released
On like VHS and laserdisc.
Yeah, so that's the cut basically we all grew up with.
So we
if you were
figured
that
that's
era.
the most
iconic
sleepover-centric
ish.
version until the 90s when the director's cut came out on
Yeah,
VHS.
and that became my problem because this kind of segues briefly into our recollections of this movie, but I had seen this movie so many times back in the day that by the time I started rewatching it in my teens, I was only rewatching probably the director's, the quote-unquote 1991 director's cut without the voiceover. And then for years it became, if you didn't have a Laserdisc player, they never re-released the VHS copy. So it became hard to get. You couldn't get the theatrical or international cuts from 82 with the voiceover. So those became, I remember when I worked at the video store I worked at, the Tommy K's, that was sought after, that people still, we still had the original.
They wanted the theatrical
versions, the VHS set. And then when all these other cuts, for years you couldn't get any of those. With all the, you couldn't get the theatrical cuts until 2007 when they released that like big box set that comes out with the briefcase and you get a little spinner car and it looks like the Voight-Kampf, it looks like the testing suitcase.
Yeah, my dad got me that for Christmas.
Yeah, you broke that spinner out and you were playing.
It came with the little faux origami.
Unicorn?
Unicorn, yeah.
Is it breakable or is it
It was
hard?
like plastic.
Oh, okay.
It was like hard plastic.
That'd be terrible if it's like actually you have some poor bastard chewing gum and tinfoil and everything off.
Some little Asian
I've
kid
done 10, yeah.
burning out hundreds of those a day.
So we decided to do that cut because there's so many. I mean, you look at this. I guess you were right because I have stuff written down.
I know Dion's got like an indecipherable
this
sheet of like the writing is so tiny. He's gonna need a jeweler's loop.
I know. I'm chain smoking in here. You're right. I as you think about it, I started doing this prep probably 3 weeks ago because to read the book.
Yeah.
And I'm such a slow reader because I think I have dyslexia. So to read the book. And then watch the movie, and then read all about it on the internets. It's a monumental and kind of I wouldn't say like it's very not off-putting, but it's almost like very almost turns you off from how much.
Bear.
Yeah.
It's a bear, this one.
Yeah. So, and also to do it kind of a justice as well, because, we're not intellectuals. We
talk a good
game. But we don't know, we like to put that on the table that we're not going to come on here and philosophize about, Felicity Jones and stuff. So we like to, talk about stuff as the layman.
I will say that I'm kind of I was excited by the prospect of doing this until the enormity of the situation.
I mean, this is one of those movies
became clear
where with that box set you have a freaking 3.5-hour documentary just on it.
So and then like a whole other disc of other supplemental footage.
When you search each disc out, you find out each cut has supplementals on each disc, and you're like, when is this going to end?
Yeah, when's it going to end?
Yeah, my dad wanted his TV back. He wants to watch the game. He wants to watch the football.
But so my history with Blade Runner is a short one. I remember it from when I was little, as we've discussed on the podcast and in private conversation with our Facebook family of sleepover maniacs.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. In our day, we
we should get them all ripping shirts.
Back in our day, there wasn't a lot of. Our parents didn't put a lot of restriction on viewing things.
Yeah.
We've talked about what restrictions.
But it shouldn't seem like just us. It seemed like that was kind of the culture.
Everybody
turned out all right.
Parents were these are the same parents that smoked cigarettes and drank fucking whiskey while they were pregnant.
Yeah. They wouldn't seatbelt us in.
Nowadays, you can't even eat peanut butter if you're pregnant.
They would seatbelt us. They wouldn't seatbelt us in. They'd smoke with windows shut in the car.
Yeah. So it was a different style of parenting back then. Not better or worse, just different. And so I remember seeing it when I was young, probably too young to really understand anything. I'm not sure I fully understand the movie.
I don't even know if I get it now. I took a college course.
But, I remember we would rent videos from Rite Aid, which we've talked about many times, and at my dad's house. So I remember seeing it when I was young. Certainly didn't see it at the movie theater, I don't think. And then I didn't really see it again until the director's cut in the early 90s, 91, 92.
Yeah.
When it came out on VHS. And then around that time is when I started really getting into movies. Started to become a cinephile.
Yeah.
So I rented it then and didn't like it. And I probably...
This is pre-college?
Yeah, pre-college.
So
probably like middle school or high school.
Yeah.
And then... I don't know if I watched it again since then, but then when it came out in the final cut version in 2007, maybe.
Because they had a 2002 cut, which was like a, what do they call that? The director's, it's something else, the director's cut or whatever, and then you have the final cut. Because Ridley at the time was doing something.
Yeah, they definitely had a re-release. I don't think they released it. Maybe they did. By that time, maybe DVD. They might have came out with a DVD of it. But when they released the final cut in 2007, it played at the Ziegfeld.
I know this story, you bastard.
And I was living in New York at the time, alone. It was a weird time in my life.
You listened to a lot of Sinatra at night.
There was a lot of
the ballads.
The infamous Rocky story is from that period of my life. And it played at the Ziegfeld, which, as far as I know, was the last real old style movie house in New York.
Yeah, I'd never been, sadly.
It's all right. And it's since closed.
I know, that's why I'm so upset.
The last thing to play there was Force Awakens.
And what does that tell you, people? Don't put off your dreams. Don't do them now.
And I would go there sometimes. It wasn't always my movie theater of choice. Because it was one screen, so they only played one movie.
But it's for people who don't realize, it's a proper old-fashioned movie house in the traditional sense of the old days of almost vaudeville or
Follies.
Yeah,
I mean, that's where it got.
So prior to cinema, you have one of those proper places that would have a stage show and a proper vaudeville thing. But today, up until it closed, it was a beautifully interior. It was almost like the Muppets show.
The interior was.
Yeah.
The outside looked updated.
Yeah.
But the interior looked pretty authentic. And as you walk up the stairs to get to the movie theater,
there red was velvet, right?
There was window. Yeah, a lot of red velvet. And they would have display cases where they displayed the old Ziegfeld Follies stuff. I
didn't know that.
And then you go walk into the movie theater. There wasn't really a balcony.
Because they didn't back in the day, they didn't let the poor people. Ziegfeld was only for the high class.
But it was a fun theater to go see.
Of course.
And it also was...
In New York, it was where they would do premieres.
There was a lot of...
So in L.A., they do at the Chinese Theater. In New York, they do it at the Ziegfeld.
Yeah.
They'd have the red carpet and stuff.
Yeah, that's where all the big premieres were.
Yeah, and it's right close to our New York City studios. It's right up 6th Avenue from where we are now.
And it's also a really big screen because it's a very long theater.
Yeah.
like it's deep. It's not tall. Like I said, there's no real balcony.
Yeah.
There's like an elevated spot towards the back that I don't know if that was how it originally was or they did that later. But it was a very long theater, so the distance from the screen to the back of the theater was pretty great. So they had a very big screen for a movie theater. Not as big as like an IMAX, obviously, but probably almost as big as like the faux IMAX when they decided to show IMAX movies in regular like AMC movie theaters.
And then charge you the same amount of money and not tell you.
And it's really like half the size of an actual IMAX.
And you're like, something's wrong here.
So I went to go see
the re-release,
the final cut.
Yeah.
And the final cut, they pulled a little bit of a Lucas, but not too much. It was like the digital stuff they did was like remove the wires.
Yeah.
Maybe move some of the flames over so they matched up with the smokestacks a little bit better in the long shots.
They took Joanna Cassidy's face and they rotoscoped her face on the stunt
so like
woman
the stunt
running.
woman wasn't as evident. But for the most part, it was pretty true. I mean, they just cleaned it up.
Yeah. They just did that with Terminator 2. They released the 3D version I saw, and they did the similar.
And I was sitting in that movie theater, and that movie started. And I like literally said out loud, like, holy shit.
Yeah.
And then in my head, I remember thinking specifically, like, quote, like, movies used to look so awesome.
When you see that, you're saying you see like that establishing shot of like the flames and the cars, spinners are coming around.
Yeah,
and then
they go
the geisha woman on the side, the Coke signs.
Holy shit, because you forget.
Yeah.
Like with CGI and everything,
how
like what things used to look like,
and then on top of it, you're seeing it projected,
and
on
you
like
certainly don't get to see it on the projected on a big screen that much anymore. And I really was like, it was love at first sight.
Dropped your popcorn.
Like that open, like that city opening happened, and I was just like, I felt like a kid again.
Yeah, I remember you've regaled me this for years.
Because
this
it really was like an emotional,
of course,
like response. Like it really impacted me. So I've told this story. I mean, I might have even told this story on the show at some point, even though we weren't talking about this movie. But Dion knows the story because it made such a huge impact on me.
So then now every time when I think of the Ziegfeld, I think about Blake's memory. Like, oh, that's that time Blake saw Blade Runner, and he says, "Wow, that was real." Because a lot of people I work with saw that re-release too.
Yeah.
And I don't know why I missed it, but.
And it was unfortunate that you missed it because it was like
I would have loved to seen it.
But to see it in that theater, it was really neat. But it really was like I literally fell in love with it the minute. This movie is problematic to say the least, but because of that screening, that experience, it was also a weird point in my life, and I was reassessing a lot of things, and to have that happen. It was like also I saw it at the perfect time for me.
Yeah.
It's like I needed it at that moment, and it was there for me.
Pure escapism.
Yeah, and it just like it hit me, and I was like, holy shit. And I've loved that movie for the last 10 years now.
Yeah.
Before that, I wasn't really that big of a fan. It took that experience to see it on the big screen. It wasn't even so much that it was the final cut, because I wasn't even that familiar with it. Other than that, like I said, I had probably seen the original VHS release in the 80s when I was a kid, too young to really even remember the details of it. Saw the director's cut in the 90s. Thought it was okay, didn't love it, and then probably my third viewing of it was that. I was like, holy crap.
Yeah.
And I've now watched this movie, various cuts, many times in the last 10 years since then.
You have not?
I have.
You have, okay.
Because I fell in love with it. Like, it really, like, I love this movie.
Yeah.
And it was because of that. So because of that, and then they released that box set that you were talking about in the briefcase.
Corresponding in 2007 with that theatrically released.
Which has the U.S. theatrical cut, the international theatrical cut, the director's cut from the early 90s, the final cut, and the Workprint version.
Yes. And I feel like there's one more on there too, that early 2002 cut, which I don't know what the difference is.
Which, I don't think so. I think that was maybe just the re-release of the...
Is that what it is? I thought they did something CGI-ish to it.
And now it's on DVD, and not like the standard DVD box set of that is basically that box set minus...
Yeah, all the bells and whistles.
Briefcase and the toys.
you can get that on DVD or Blu-ray.
And so I was excited by the prospect of doing this movie. And in typical Saturday Night Movie Sleepovers fashion, we were trying to think about like what would our angle on it be, like what could we talk about that hasn't been talked about a million times. And though, we'll definitely get into some of the behind-the-scenes stuff. We usually are pretty heavy on that kind of stuff. I'm not positive we should talk about that stuff too much because
we picked the hardest way to go after this movie.
Because obviously we'll get into the things that we find interesting about the making of it and stuff. But really, like that Dangerous Days documentary on that box set, and then all the supplemental stuff on that extra disc of supplemental stuff. I mean, anything you really want to know about the making of this movie, you can find there. So if you're titillized by this conversation,
if those breasts of yours are titillized,
I would recommend that's the place to go and
check that.
And so
lengthy, but it's almost as lengthy as the Alien. Box set special features. Those things are another.
Yeah, but the Alien box set's like, we're talking 4 movies.
Yeah, and each one is like 3 hours long. I watched the Alien. I watched Ridley Scott's Alien special features, and that was just as long as this.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because that's like 4 movies. This is 1 movie.
You can get to California quicker than you can sit down on the couch. That's why it took me. To do homework after school, I had to watch. 2 weeks ago, it was my only time. Like I had like a 3.5 hour, or at least a 4 hour chunk.
Yeah.
Because you're going to be getting up, going to the bathroom. You're going to be pausing it. I've got 2 animals. One's going to want to go out. One's going to want attention. So you need a whole chunk. So my one day off, that Saturday, the entire day I spent doing that, and then reading the book, and then watching the other cuts with you over the past 2 days, where you and I just been living in our PJs. Sitting really too close to the TV. Of course, we had to monopolize the biggest TV in the house, my dad's TV, so we couldn't watch TV. So we've been doing, I think I do agree with you. This has been the most prep, Even my wife at one point was like, does Blake do as much prep as this as you do? I'm like, he does. I'm like, he does. Just get away. Go do something.
Yeah, so, it was pretty labor intensive.
And probably because we've been doing these big movies too. We did Raiders, we did RoboCop, we did there's something else big in there. They're
Predator was
Predator, that's it. Predator. So they're big movies for people,
So, and we feel the responsibility.
Yeah,
we feel weight on our shoulders.
Yeah, we feel obligated.
We have to deliver something that people are going to appreciate.
And try to give something new, like you said, bring a fresh look to it, because I'm sure this has been talked into nauseum in written form. I mean, freaking academics have written complete books on this. Yeah. So what the hell are we going to say that's different from other dudes?
Thinking about that viewing that I had in 2007 that made me fall in love with this movie, I'm right now at this very moment, kind of realizing that it also. I watched movies very differently post film school, than I did prior to that. So I think maybe also some of that. The thing about Dion knows, and we've talked about it because we did Deep Red, and I talked about the Three Mother trilogy with James from Wrong Reel.
Dario Argento movies.
Yeah. I feel like, for me, I identify with Blade Runner in much the same way I identify with Dario Argento movies. And a lot of Italian horror, but specifically Dario Argento. Because Dario Argento's movies are so reliant on visual aesthetic. Like, to me, the story of Blade Runner is here or there.
Tapdash.
It's like, it's fine. There's things about it. I think it's a clunky movie in a lot of ways, from... just shots, for instance, when Harrison Ford's given Sean Young the voice contest. Yeah. And then she says something, and then it cuts to a reaction shot from Tyrell. It's like clear that's like from a different, like you see it's an over the shoulder shot. Well, there's of Harrison Ford, but they're trying to fake it. Yeah. To make it seem like it's a reaction shot from Tyrell. So it's clunky, and I feel like the story's a little bit clunky, and I don't mean any of this in a negative way, because I love the movie.
Even some of the cuts for me I found to be a little weird, because when you realize how much, Ridley Scott was a guy notorious to do takes up into the double digits. Yeah. And then you realize knowing that, and then you see what he chooses to use, maybe it wasn't him in the final cut, as in what was put onto the screen in 82, you realize... You think you would have extended a shot, or you would have used a different take, like specifically at the beginning when the Holden, the Blade Runner character who's killed at the beginning by Byron James, when there's a quick cut of him hitting the desk, and like I would have thought they would have held on that longer. What they do in the Workprint cut, which I liked a lot better, or again for me at the end when Daryl Hannah gets shot and flies against the wall.
Oh, yeah.
You see in the outtakes, like, he had some poor son of a bitch all day jump into the wall. So you think they would have used a better whacking into the wall and coming down. It's just so sudden, you know. So I see a lot of that, what you mean, you know.
But what I mean by, in terms of the story, it's like the story's pretty straightforward, you know. And for me as a viewer, what I love about it is what I said when I used to teach the horror class. I used to teach a horror class, and I would show Dario Argento movies to the kids, and I would to the students, and I would say, like, look,
he's taught kindergarten.
There's people that love Dario Argento, and there's people that don't like Dario Argento. There's just a few people that are like, could go either way on Dario Argento. Like, he's almost polarizing in that way. And it's because, like, you either, and I used to recommend to them, you just have to sit and watch it and let the movie kind of wash over you. Like, you have to watch Suspiria and just let it, like, don't think too hard about it. Don't try to follow what's happening in it. Just let it happen. Experience it. And when it's done, it either connects with you on some level or it doesn't. And that's fine. Either one's fine. I mean, it's art. You either have some kind of response or you don't. I feel this way about Blade Runner. Like, I feel like if you try to, and like you said, there are people that have written books about it, but to me as a viewer, like, if you try to get too deep into it, I feel like you almost ruin it. There's something about just like sitting in a movie theater or sitting in front of your big screen TV and just letting it happen in front of you and just experience it. It's a visceral experience, more so than most movies, American movies at this time, like Hollywood style movies. You know, Dario Argento is an exception. You know, a movie like that Dion didn't care for when we saw in college, but a movie that I liked a lot was Tarkovsky's Stalker.
Stalker's that's something I should really go back.
I mean, that one's like a 4-hour movie.
I know, but that's something I should go back and look at, because I have a friend of mine who I work with who is a cameraman who's Russian, and he immigrated here from St. Petersburg in the early 90s. Funny enough, learned how to speak fluent English by watching Seinfeld. He sat here just watching Seinfeld, and he's a wonderful guy now.
Like this.
He's like, what's up with all you people? I don't know. What's going on with America?
He's like, Stalker, it's a great movie.
Yeah, this is crazy. You gotta go see it. I mean, go on. What's up with Gilligan's Island? The professor can make a coconut out of a radio, but a radio on a coconut, he can't fix a hole in a boat. But I brought that up to him. He's like, Stalker's an institution. He's like, Stalker.
It's in Russia. It's
everybody knows Stalker. He's like, Stalker is brilliant. He's like, it is so meta. It is brilliant. And then he found it for me on YouTube, and he's like, you should go watch it now.
And even Tarkovsky's Solaris.
Solaris is great.
There are certain movies, but it's very rare that you get like a Hollywood movie. Yeah, in my opinion.
I would even put up, for instance, 77 Sorcerer, William Friedkin Sorcerer.
Yeah.
Well,
William Friedkin has a...
Yeah, he has that kind of a propensity to do stuff that's kind of more art house in a way, where you don't get that traditionally from like the Scorsese, Spielberg. You get a little more... I mean, maybe Coppola does that to a certain extent in some of his movies when he is able, like Apocalypse Now.
Well, Apocalypse Now is that...
And when you're able to like meditate, But a lot of the problems today, I think... We're getting a little off topic, but I think you don't have the freedom to do that.
Yeah.
Because you have too many cooks in the kitchen. Have these 20-year-old execs. We
found out there were many cooks in the kitchen in 1982.
For this movie. So he was having problems from the get-go.
But it's just... because I wasn't able to watch movies that way in my pre-film school. And I don't even think film school wasn't even what did it.
No.
Allowed me to tap into that. It was really, I think, falling in love with Argento and stuff like that. Seeing movies that you had never seen before. Realizing that movies can be this other thing, that when you're a teenager and you only have access to your local video store. Dion had a really great local video store that had these kinds of movies that I didn't. So me, at Captain Video, which was a great video store, but it was a lot of like straight to video and
that had a great freaking... I remember I bought when that thing was going out of business, when I was up sleeping over your house, I bought a couple of good things from there.
Yeah, but I didn't have like Best Video, which had, which was
like Mr. Moto, all the stuff out of print and stuff.
Yeah, which had like a really great like classic or foreign section and stuff like that. So it took being introduced to things like Repulsion by Polanski and Dead Ringers by David Cronenberg, movies that are operating on some different level. And I think in a lot of ways, Blade Runner operating on a different level. And I don't even know so much intellectually, but viscerally, stylistically, certainly.
It is to a certain intellect, because I think it's a lot of these things are debatable, either done on purpose or by accident. A lot of stuff's left ambiguous.
Yeah.
So you can choose your own adventure in it, and that's why you get such hard partisans on it, where they almost get to fisticuffs about their feelings of it. Which a lot of stuff, if you just go read the book, "Do Android Dream of Electric Sheep," kind of clarify a lot. But that doesn't necessarily mean that Blade Runner the movie is taking the same stance as the book.
Oh yeah.
So that's where the confliction comes in.
So Blade Runner comes out in 1982.
So my quick backstory about this is I remember watching this alongside of Terminator back then and Empire Strikes Back. We had this on a tape, and I remember really polarizingly watching the beginning with Byron James, and that I didn't understand. You don't understand stuff when you're little, and seeing that opening scene and then him killing that guy. Yeah. And I must have made it.
I do remember like the turtle talk.
Yeah.
Like,
that's and then
you turn it over, and it's big in the sun. I remember that as a kid.
Yeah, I remember that too. I'm getting uncomfortable too, like Byron James. I'm like, why isn't he turning the turtle over? Dad, why is the turtle over? So I remember that scene. I remember the stuff like in the rain, the Blade, like, "Ooh, Blade Runner!" Like I remember that. Yeah. Of course, the iconic, the geishas and the Coke signs and the spinners flying around, and the propensity for raining in the early '80s. People may not remember. Acid rain was a huge worry and fear. So that was the whole thing. Like, it's acid rain that's raining. I remember all that, and I remember specifically them going to see what's his face, James Hong, and his I made your eye,
Hannibal Chew.
Yeah, I remember that whole sequence, and me being very scared too, because of the you have that the heaviness of the two, Rutger Hauer and Byron James with him, and then those are the things I remember, and then Harrison Ford killing Joanna Cassidy, running on the cars, shooting through the glass, and then I remember the ending bit in the Bradbury building, and the whole ending up until him dying on the rain. And
prior to the 91 or 92 director's cut, that's all I really had. I had memories of imagery, which is just the perfect, if you're gonna remember a movie, just images of a movie. This is a great movie to remember because they're so gorgeous. But there was a lot of that stuff, narratively wise. Really, I remember the tortoise, the turtle. Talking about the turtle in the Mein Kampf, or the
Mein Kampf, the Void Comp test,
Comp test, and then just
I understood the plot. He's going after these guys because they're fugitives. I understood it to that, and they're robots, and that's all. And then up until this screening, I've had a really hard delineation, realizing, I don't know why, but I've always traditionally thought that they were androids. They were mechanized cyborgs underneath, but then that changes. That's another ambiguous point where you realize this is movies heavily based on genetics. So they're not. They're almost, they're grown in a test tube. It sounds like, but then that's different kind of from the book. So it's very confusing. So when I was little, I used to think they're like Terminators, like robots. And then I remember that, and then the ending, and then I remember really liking the movie and it being dark, and then it being like the 80s sci-fi movie. That's the movie people would look at, like Blade Runner or something else in its own category, aside from an E.T. or something else, or The Thing, which was a big thing for me when I was little, John Carpenter's. So then I knew it well enough, and then when the 90s came around, I guess, when the 91 cut came out, I watched that, and then like you, I didn't like it as much, because I think it's harder to understand. You have to jump with a lot of things, because when the narration's taken out, you have to try to make these leaps yourself of what's going on, and then in the early 2000s, Blade Runner was one of the first movies that came on DVD. And I have that DVD. And I have that very simple Warner Brothers. If it's Warner Brothers,
pan scan on one side, and you flip
you flip the disc over, and it has that weird opening where it clicks open the box, and it has interactive menu, maybe a trailer, And then when it came out on Blu-ray in 2002 or 3, I have that, and then this box set coming out in 2007, I watched the crap. I remember being at work and how psyched people were, and how the draw was that, oh my God, they're going to have this documentary called Dangerous Days that's going to be super long, and they've gotten Harrison Ford to talk about the movie. And then all of us, yeah, just a little. And all of us, we huddled around a laptop at work. We hit the trailer, we watched, and then you see at the end of the trailer, they show Harrison Ford, and he's saying something about it. And you're like, holy shit, they've got him to, you know. Yeah. And I remember how big of a deal that was it coming out. What edition you're going to get, the regular one? You're going to get the briefcase edition with the spinner? You know, it was a huge deal. And then I remember watching the final cut then. And then I had plans to, like, you know, in a couple of years, watch the Workprint. I'll watch this, and then, like, you know, you get just too busy, you know. Yeah. So I hadn't, until this viewing, I hadn't never watched the Workprint or the original international cut from '82, and like you said, since the '80s. I'd never watched the Workprint at all.
Yeah.
And then I'd never watched the Workprint since the '80s. So it was a treat to come back and kind of remember.
I had never watched the Workprint before we watched it for this either. Yeah. Workprint kind of popped up. It was basically what they used for test screenings in '82.
Yeah.
Which is, people didn't like it, and that's why the producers
took it away and did all these changes,
made all these changes. But that like,
and that's minus the voiceover as well. The Workprint.
Yeah. And it doesn't have like the tacked on quote unquote happy ending.
Yeah. Different titles at the beginning and everything.
But somehow that Workprint resurfaced in the early 90s and had screenings in Los Angeles and San Francisco in 90 and 91. And it was the audience responses to those screenings of the Workprint, which, like I said, were what they used for test screenings 10 years earlier, that kind of got them to do the quote-unquote director's cut, which was like unauthorized because it's not really Ridley Scott's director's cut. They just tried to...
Yeah, Ridley was doing that 1492 movie at the time, so he just tried to supervise, and they had people come in and, I guess, work off his notes, and then
he still had issues. The Workprint and
what his original intentions were and all that kind of. It's much like almost like a Touch of Evil situation with what's his face, Orson Welles. Thank you.
So this Workprint resurfaced. Got a couple of screenings. People loved it.
But that got the ball rolling.
Screenings, but then people were like, well, maybe we should
let Ridley take another hit at it.
Yeah. You know? But then that came out, and it really wasn't Ridley's...
He was kind of pissed.
True director's vision.
When the Workprint came out, and that what got him to accept. Like, he was like, this is not how I ever wanted it to be seen.
Yeah.
And that got the 91 cut out, and then he was still like, well, this is still not what I wanted.
Yeah.
And then that's when they did another...
when technology and DVD and Blu-ray came around, it was like, all right, well, let's do the final cut. Let's make it exactly what Ridley would want.
Yeah.
So Ridley was heavily involved, and that's the version that I was talking about that I saw. But this movie came out...
Which is a great version.
I love... That's my preferred version.
Yeah.
But also it's because it's the one that I fell in love with.
Yeah.
You know, when
but all the stuff he did in it, like fixing the Joanna Cassidy bit and all that, it's kind of... He did do a Lucas to an extent, but he didn't change.
Yeah,
he didn't have like Han shoot for or what's his face. You know, it was more, you know, just fixing things as opposed to like going back and, you know. Well, I guess he did. You know, with adding the unicorn and stuff, there was.
Yeah, but that was in the director's cut.
Yeah,
too.
yeah. Okay,
not in the Workprint though.
Yeah.
But so this movie came out in 1982, June 25th, 1982. Also coming out that weekend.
Oh. 6 months before Christmas. This is an early Christmas present for everybody.
John Carpenter's The Thing came out that weekend.
Yeah.
Megaforce and Monty Python Live at the Hollywood Bowl. That's just that weekend. But that summer we saw Star Trek 2, The Wrath of Khan, Poltergeist, Conan the Barbarian, E.T. came out 2 weeks before that, Firefox, Secret of Nim, Tron, Zapped with Scott Baia, Night Shift, particular favorite of us here at Saturday Night Movie Sleepovers.
You said Road Warrior, Cat People, Fast Times at Ridgemont High.
Yeah, Last American Virgin, Friday the 13th Part 3.
You said Class of '84, Officer and a Gentleman, The Beastmaster.
It's a hell of a summer.
Rocky 3. So
people have said that 82, because we've said people have said 84 as the...
We declared 84 was pretty cool because 84 you had a lot of good stuff out, and then somebody else was
and then this year we proved that 87 was a hell of a year.
Yeah, and this 82,
but 82, some people claim that 82 is the best year for movies, Hollywood movies anyway. And this is with that list, I certainly would not argue against it. But it's interesting that two movies that are now considered all-time classics, The Thing and Blade Runner, come out in the same weekend and both flop miserably.
And it's predicted because like a year or so before, all these either critics or people in the industry were like, you can't, all these movies that are in production, these mega properties cannot all come out around the same time and find audiences because they're going to just cancel, all these pluses are going to cancel each other out, which ends up happening. You have E.T. come out, and then you have these other ones, and people blame E.T. We know for the thing, if that's true or not, or sci-fi in general. So you have all these Star Trek. I mean, you think of all the major.
The
Rocky,
thing really bombed. I think Blade Runner came out, might have been number 2 that weekend.
Yeah, but then that went down
after E.T. But then it had an okay opening weekend, but then it fell off pretty quickly. Whereas the thing just was like,
I mean, you have so many. You have like the Star Trek property. You have a new Eastwood movie. You have a new a Rocky movie. You have a new Spielberg movie. You have a couple new comedies. I mean, it's just you have a new Arnold movie. I mean, you have so much stuff to choose from.
Yeah.
And all those movies we've mentioned, if you take them out of '82, they're all pretty good movies.
Yeah.
I mean, they're pretty good to decent to like really good movies. I mean, Wrath of Khan is considered by some to be the best of the original series.
Most, I would say.
Yeah. I mean, some people had like 4. You know,
I'd say still the majority.
You and I, we like 2. I like 6 as well, but that's also
we're
Nicholas
both fans
Myers.
of 6.
Yeah,
2 and 6.
2 and 6 are great. But and Rocky 3 is good. You know, you have some really heavy hitting. I mean, and people, E.T. so iconic for people, so it's like they end up kind of like destroying themselves in a way, you know, because they have to cannibalize an audience.
Yeah.
So Blade Runner comes out and doesn't really do as well as people predicted, at least domestically in the U.S. here.
It's also the first theatrical adaptation of a Philip K. Dick book.
Yeah.
As we mentioned earlier, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, which came out in 1968.
Yeah.
Now, it just, could be sacrilege, but so we read the book for this.
Yeah.
And I have to admit, I didn't like the book.
See, now, this is what I've read. This is my third reading of the book. I read the book in 2003 or 4, and then we watched the movie, and then I actually reread the book last year.
Yeah.
And then that was the idea of like, hey, we should probably do Blade Runner, and that was when and then then we reread the book here, and each time I read the book, I've liked it more.
Really?
And this has been my favorite.
I really didn't care for it.
Yeah, the third, when I read it in 2003, it's like I almost didn't understand it, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
You know, it was kind of like foreign to me, and it was like, and then when I reread it last year, I really dug it, and then rereading it again now, I really, really loved it. And I almost prefer the book to the movie, the story-wise of what's happening, I think it's one of these situations we should probably say off the bat. It's like The Shining, from the book to the movie, or one of those where the book, they both complement each other. You can't really, view one
two different visions of like a similar story.
Yeah, like a property, because it's just they're so as similar as they are, they're so very different. You know, I mean, and Philip K. Dick wrote the book in '68, comes out, and he was very hesitant about having people take his stuff and put it into onto the big screen. But then once this came out, this kind of greenlit all these other. I mean, for people who don't know, he wrote We Can Remember It For You Wholesale, which turns out to be Total Recall. He wrote Minority Report. He wrote
Paycheck.
He wrote Paycheck. He wrote a lot of short stories.
And now on Amazon, there's
the Man in the High Castle, which is when he was researching that in the early '60s, gave him the idea of Blade Runner, I guess, or Blade Runner, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, because that is a take on, what is it, an alternate future?
It's an alternate future of like the Nazis and the Japanese.
Winning the
World War II.
Yeah, and then what the world would turn out to be. In researching that book, he was doing a lot of heavy research into Nazism and Hitler.
Reading like Nazi diaries.
Yeah, he got access to like a college kind of to all these things that are packed away at like college universities, and he realized the lack of empathy. Particularly like the Nazi soldiers, SS or whatever, had for, say, the Jews and the concentration camps.
Yeah, I mean, it really made him question, which is really the big question of the movie and the book, which is like, what makes us human?
Yeah.
And reading like this lack of empathy for human life.
Jobs that kind of psychologically make you unhuman or uncaring, unempathetic, where you have that
So in his mind, reading these Nazi accounts and reading what the Nazis did and how they really kind of didn't have empathy for humans.
Like he brings up a point where he read a passage where like the Nazi on Chance was saying like we were kept up all night by the children screaming because they were starving, and it was just like a side note that really disturbed him. It's like, well, what the fuck? So then he brought that idea into Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, and
the idea of that the Nazis are subhuman. They're not human.
Yeah.
And then so like how do you bring that into science fiction terms? The Andes, the androids in the
empathetic,
in the Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, they're not human.
Yeah. Which we can get into in a little bit, the book itself. And then I think he also wrote, which is the movie Screamers. He wrote the short story for that.
Oh, yeah. I have to admit, I mean, I read this. I'm not a huge narrative reader anymore, and I haven't read a lot of Dick. I read the short stories that led to Paycheck and Minority Report several years ago. I've read a couple of the short stories. I never read like one of his longer novels. But yeah, I just didn't. It didn't float my boat. You know what it was? It's like, and it's hard because like anything we try to do with the movies, it's like you have to kind of put them in context. In 1968, this is going to read for people much differently than it's going to read for me in 2017.
Yeah.
But to be honest, and it's not so much a negative for him, but I would say like a positive for us, which is like, I read it and it was like the stuff I've read of yours is like just as good. Like written.
Well,
like,
thank you.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was
well,
like as you read it, it's like the language and everything. It's like it. I don't know. It's not. To me, it just didn't read as exceptional. Like it didn't read as exceptionally well written. Not poorly written, but not like exceptionally well written. I didn't love a lot of the stuff that got cut out of it from the movie, and I'm sure we'll talk about some of those things and more specific things. And I understand this is probably sacrilege, and I'm I'm certainly not shitting on it. Like I enjoyed it just for what it was, but. Not a huge fan, I have to admit.
I think
but I feel like I have to be honest if we're going to talk about it.
I think it's at the time too. It's kind of paving the new ground and going a certain way, and it wasn't very popular when it came out either. I mean, it came out in '68, and then it kind of I think went out of print, and it only came back into print in '82 when the movie finally came out. They asked him to do the novelization. He's like, "You fucking kidding me? I have a book I already did. Why the hell do you want me to do the novelization?" Because we have to market it to like 20-year-olds. He's like, have them read my book. So that got them a little hard. But so they just took the movie poster for Blade Runner and put it on that, and then and I think that might be the edition of the book I have. It is interesting. I mean, on a side note, to mention that. The original book takes place in San Francisco, comes out in '68, and that's the same year Bullitt comes out. And there are some similarities I've heard over the years of Frank Bullitt, Steve McQueen's character in Bullitt, to what you see on the screen with Harrison Ford to a certain extent.
Harrison Ford is, I don't know, in some ways you could even see that he's channeling McQueen. Certainly the look.
It's
very McQueen-esque compared to Indiana Jones or Han Solo.
And I mean, if you look at his haircut, Harrison Ford talks about like right after Indiana Jones, he quickly didn't want to. The next movie he wanted to do a little more serious. He was cool with doing a sci-fi movie because he had done movies that he did Star Wars, which was very sci-fi.
And by that time, he had done Empire Strikes Back also.
Yeah, and he did Indiana Jones, and that was like a fantasy escape property adventure. So he was looking to do something more serious, but he was completely open to doing something in one of those realms of sci-fi or adventure.
Yeah, I think, just to interrupt you for 1 second, I think that's another thing you got to put in perspective. Not only is this the first time we're seeing a Philip K. Dick adaptation, but you also got to put in context, like, I mean, by that point, Harrison Ford was a big star because he had been in Star Wars and Raiders of the Lost Ark the year before that, but those are really like the only things people knew him from. I mean, he's got a very tiny part in Apocalypse Now.
Very tiny conversation.
In the conversation. He's got like American Graffiti a little bit. But like he really hadn't been.
Yeah, Force 10 and Navarone didn't really do as well. Fowler's
I mean, certainly Star Wars and Indiana Jones wouldn't made him a movie star.
And he was coming right off the heels of those. Yeah. I mean, those were huge. So it was like he was jumping into this property. So he was like, I just wore a hat the entire movie. I don't want to wear a hat. And he got his hair cut. And his haircut was very different from the time of people wearing, like, you had punk rockers. You had people doing various things with their hair. Hair was long. People had mullets. So I find it now, you look at his haircut, it's very modern for our age. Like I wear that haircut he has to a certain extent. So it's I don't think it was forward-thinking of him, but I think it almost comes to be timeless. So rounding about to the McQueen thing, for people who may not know, they wrote that Whitney Houston movie, The Bodyguard, for McQueen, but he didn't want to do it. So that sat on the shelf for, 10 or 15 years. And then when it got made, that's why Kevin Costner has the look with the short hair and the thing. So there are a couple things in the movie Blade Runner that have a lot of weird references that I couldn't find when I was researching this now, but I'd read over the years about how he carries himself, the visual style, how he looks, even the cardigan at the end, the kind of gun, he strikes a pose in it that's right out of Bullet, So it was really interesting to see that, and then the dichotomy of the original book coming out in '68 takes place in San Francisco. The movie Bullet takes place in San Francisco, and they're both cops, and and they're put on an assignment they don't really want to do, So, but anyway,
but it takes place in San Francisco, 1992.
1992, yes. Then in subsequent
the far-off future of 1992.
And also, this is for the greater extent for moviegoers. When this movie comes out, this is one of the first examples, probably, of what the dystopian future. Yeah. Because people were still thinking of like Logan's Run.
Well,
you have that.
No, well, that's the thing. I was thinking,
but I mean, in a sense of the clean.
Yeah,
it's dirty.
I was trying to think of that because that dystopian thing, post-apocalyptic dystopian thing, you
have like Battleship Galactica, which is like
Battlestar Galactica.
I'm sorry, Battleship. That's our own.
No, but you had Soylent Green.
Yeah.
Which is very similar to this, in that it is like poor people on the bottom.
Oh yeah.
The rich people live in like the high rises. They get the good food.
Yeah, and they're eating.
And the people on the
Soylent Yellow, Soylent Blue.
But they have like apples and shit on the thing. So
Omega Man, which was Richard Matheson's.
It was kind of around, because I was trying to think like what was it about the late 70s and early 80s that gave us Mad Max, Escape from New York, Blade Runner. But then when you think about it, like that kind of view of the future had been around. I mean, Metropolis.
Yeah.
And then in the 70s, like I said,
I guess
you get Soylent Green and stuff. But also Soylent Green is based on a book that probably was written around the same time.
This was written.
That if not...
well, I think what they do in Blade Runner is they emphasize the technology where you have a post-apocalyptic... I don't remember for Soylent Green if it's post-apocalyptic. I don't think it is. I could be wrong, of course. Yeah. But I remember them being, in cities and stuff, and them. And
the movie isn't really post-apocalyptic.
That's what I mean.
The book is
very much so.
Post-nuclear war, and that's why we're living in like nuclear fallout.
Yeah,
that's why the world's so.
Where they drop that in the movie version, and they make it more on technology taking over, pollution. And the eradication of basically animals on Earth, and even just trees and stuff like that, which is not really touched upon in the movie, which is really a heavy-handed part of the book.
Yeah, it's a big part of the book. Is that we're living in like this nuclear fallout, and most animals are extinct. So, you get glimpses of it of like, oh, if you think I could afford, if I could afford a real snake, you think I'd be doing this
in the movie? Yeah, they say that, or is that owl real? But that's really, they all touch, and I wish for a certain
because animals are a big thing in the book.
Yeah,
he owns an electric sheep. The idea of owning a real animal is like a huge status symbol, and you're almost looked down upon if you own like a synthetic or a robot animal.
Yeah.
So that's a big part of the book that we only get tastes of in the movie.
Yeah, I mean, I guess to briefly summarize the book I figure we should probably just, if we're going to talk about the book, maybe talk about it as we go on with the movie, how it's compare as opposed to laying out the whole book.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't. I don't think getting too deep into the book is. I don't think people are going to enjoy that discussion if you haven't read the book.
Yeah.
I think in kind of chipping away at it in comparison
is the best way to.
Probably the most listener friendly.
Yeah, in the book, there's a war called World War Terminus, which is WWT, and that has this fallout. You're saying that there's this, that, and people are living in this kind of post-apocalyptic world. We get Rick Deckard. They're still living in cities and everything like that, but just that's why people migrating off to off-world colonies to get away from the fallout and the dust, as they call it, or the kibble, which is just this stuff everywhere that just kind of just like the crap that people, the waste that just ends up multiplying almost on its own.
Sure.
And Rick Deckard has a wife in the book. Her name's Iran.
What I will say about the nuclear fallout, like the worlds that the book and the movie occupy. Yeah, like we're in a post-apocalyptic future, post-nuclear war future in the book. The movie is more hitting like capitalism. It's kind of what made the world the way it is. Industrialization. You can see the pollution. I mean, as we open the movie, if we open the city, we see like these firing like stacks. It's clearly like pollution. And these were all things you were saying. Acid rain was a big thing in the 80s. This fear of acid rain. Like don't use aerosol cans because it's putting a hole in the ozone.
Yeah.
There was
it's perpetual night in the movie. You never see the
late
daytime.
70s and early 80s into the mid 80s. This is a time when we start thinking about like we got to start recycling shit.
Yeah, I mean,
what are we going to do with all this garbage?
Yeah, there was a big push in the late 70s. People thought of it wasn't global warming; it was the reverse. That people thought that we were going to have another ice age. So that there was covers on Time magazine of like the next ice age, where we thought we were going to restart it, an ice age. So there was suddenly after the post-industrial, idea of us going into the middle of the 20th century, people were like, shit, all this stuff, we have to start trying to conserve or do something.
If anything, I think the brilliance of the movie and the writers, what are their names? Hampton Fancher and David Peoples, who wrote the script, and then Ridley Scott is like actually like kind of correctly forecasting the future.
Yeah, how it's happening.
Certainly not as fast because the movie takes place not in San Francisco but in Los Angeles, and not in 1992 but in 2019.
Yeah,
which is 2 years away. But you kind of do start seeing things kind of going that way. But the idea of that Tyrell people, they all live in these monuments above the rest of the city, and the idea of what you're talking about where it's like it's dirty and it's used, but yet there's these technological things. That's kind of the start of the cyberpunk movement, which you've talked about, the book that you like a lot.
No, Neuromancer comes out the year after this. Yeah,
a lot, and how that kind of coined the phrase cyberspace, and I think that's like those are two very different things. And the idea of the book, you see this idea of, in the movie, you see this idea of like overpopulation. But at least as a reader, I didn't get the sense that it was like lack of population.
Yeah, because people have either died or they've immigrated. So some people who, what ends up happening is you have to get tested monthly by the government, and you could be deemed as special. If you're deemed as special or a chicken head, you've had so much fallout, you're not able to reproduce, and you're kind of forced to live on Earth. You can't immigrate and leave.
You're not allowed to leave.
So a lot of the people, so you have and that's what you get a little bit with what's his face's character in the movie, the toy maker, Sebastian, is that you have people living in these huge buildings alone. You're living in skyscrapers that everyone has left. You found an apartment and you just live there, and you could be the only one in the apartment or in the
apartment building.
Yeah,
you could be the only person living in
or in a neighborhood, and people live more near the city centers. And Deckard has a wife in the book, and a very interesting thing that they don't put in the movie is that they have this thing called the mood pen fill machine, where you get up in the morning, and it's very funny because, like you're talking about forecasting what's happening now, it's very much what you're seeing, where you get up in the morning and automatically they'll set a mood they want to have.
Yeah. So you could type in what you
can dial.
Feel.
So you can dial like C or D settings to be happy. You can dial 888 to desire to watch TV. His wife ends up dialing twice a month a feeling of despair and just loneliness, because she wants to be able to feel that. So what you have in this is that people have such a sadness or just a they're taking drugs or what pills to make them feel different. So even Deckard wakes up in the morning, he'll dial something he had to get ready to go to work. So people were relying so much on it where it's not even a drug. It's almost like it's an implant, and it's like it kind
of triggers the chemical reaction in your brain. Much like pills do.
Yeah, what we do nowadays. And the other big thing in the book, which I find fascinating, is there's this thing called the empathy box, and there's this thing called Mercerism, which is completely taken out of the movie. And it's now, once you had the World War terminus, the first thing you start losing is the owls drop dead. In the book's world, and then the other flying things, and then because of the fallout, basically all animals on Earth ended up becoming extinct for the most part,
or very close to extinction. That's why they're so rare and considered like a status symbol for the rich.
Yeah. So what you have now is there's a complete turnaround in the popular psyche where animals are so revered that it's a crime if you don't try to maintain them, and even to the point where it's not even like people don't want to not maintain them. The entire world population believes that. Like, oh my God, look what we've done. We have to try to take care of animals. It's a huge part of your life. And this religion, almost this Mercerism, and this guy Wilbur Mercer came to be, and he represents that. And what it ends up happening is you have this thing called an empathy box. And in the morning, what you can do is you can fuse with your empathy box. And what it basically is, it looks like two paddles you have for like a PlayStation. And you can hold on to that, and then you can kind of go on almost like an internet, and you can be with all these other people in the world who are doing the same thing you're doing at the same time, and you can feel, it's almost basically like what we do now going on Facebook. It's what our cell phone has become, where these empathy boxes, you touch them in the morning, and it's almost like you're saying your prayer. And you're fusing with Mercer, and Mercer is this old man going up a hill, and he's forever going up a hill. It's the struggle to get to this top. It's a rocky hill. There's rocks coming down, whacking you, and you feel the pain. You may get a scratch or a cut from the rock in real life when you take it off. But you can feel everybody else there, and you can feel the collectiveness of the world there. You can feel other people's happiness or loneliness. If you feel good, you can help somebody else feel good. So that's the reason why people want to
it's
merge.
Like this pseudo-religious thing, and Mercer is a religious figure in the book.
Everybody does.
Well, it's interesting because the idea of the androids, I mean, they're not called replicants in the book, they're called androids, or Andes for short. We talked about how Philip K. Dick kind of got the idea because of the Nazis. They were missing this fundamental thing that made you human, and he's kind of manifested this as empathy in the book. And so it's an interesting thing because you have...
It's very different from the book from the movie, because in the book you start to see that some of these the android, you get the feeling that in the movie the androids have the feelings kind of for each other, or in the book they don't. The androids don't really care.
The book's the movie's a very different beast than the book. But in the book, I find it interesting because you're explaining like the mood organ, which is what they call the first machine, that kind of a slang that Dion's
which is basically about. Like you said, it's basically a lot of people
taking antidepressants and stuff. But it's also interesting because on the one side they have the Mercerism thing going on, that machine, but then the question of like what makes us human is the overall big question between the book and the movie. And it's just interesting because if you talking about the mood organ, and you can dictate how you want to feel, in a way it's like you're programming yourself. You're taking away your humanity.
Yeah. And then
you're trying to gain that humanity back by doing the Mercer machine.
Yeah, you have this issue where there's this huge amount of loneliness because of you're living in these empty cities or whatever. Like you said, you could be living in an apartment building by yourself.
The world in the book is, like I said, in the movie, you get this sense of like overpopulation. That's why they're going to Mars or whatever. They're leaving and going out. In the movie, it's in
the book.
I mean,
in the book, because of the war that happened and because of the nuclear fallout, people have left to the colonization to get away and have a better life.
So there aren't a lot of people in the book, is what we're saying. Like the city is not
in
overrun.
City centers there are, but not. Yeah, once you leave, there's stuff that hasn't even been touched, like buildings falling apart, decay, and the other big thing in the book is there's this guy called Buster Friendly and his friendly friends, and it's just basically a 24-hour TV show that really you can only get. It's like the only channel you can get, and he's also I don't know what it's almost like the Jerry Lewis like telethon, where it's like you're just watching him, and for some reason people just think that he's a regular guy, and they're like, whoa, I don't know how Buster Friendly's able to broadcast 23 hours a day, and he's had all his guests come on, how do they stay good looking and all, and he informs you of what's going on. So it's very, and it's not even almost like government run. You don't really get a sense of an overarching government hand on it. It's just you have the mood organ to like make you feel something, then like just despair. But then people are able to dial up like Deckard's wife. She's almost bipolar depressant. Sadly, she's dialing depression for herself. He wakes up in the morning in the book and he's like, "Why don't we both dial something happy?" And we'll leave, and then, she doesn't want to. He's like, I'll dial for you. And she's like, if you dial for me, I'll dial something, So it's almost, it's very, I found that very realistic, that argument of like, when you're married in a relationship for a while, you have those kind of issues with, you're seeing the same person every damn day. And it's like, and then the only thing they have outside of their job is, as you're saying, is either the empathy box and the mercerism, and being able to like feel that there's a presence of someone else out there, which I said I kind of really equate to like Facebook now. And then also this Buster Friendly who's just broadcasting,
which is to me read much like a sensational, almost like a Morton Downey Jr. He's very like over the top, kind of like not like a Howard Stern, but like one of these crazy, like Richard Dawson, like Running Man, like very like hello, like he's not killing people in it, but it's the only thing you watch. And you trust him because he says stuff, and you get your information and news from him, So the book progresses that like it seems like as well as the book and in the movie, that the Blade Runner or the bounty hunter, the Deckard character, the general population really doesn't know that there are this subtype of policemen out there. And which I don't understand. Well, he's not really even a policeman in the book.
He's a bounty hunter that is sanctioned.
Blade Runner actually is a term that came in for the movie. They couldn't call the movie "Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep?" It was too long. It's a great title, but not for like a Hollywood movie. So they talked about maybe calling it Android or Android.
Dangerous Days.
Dangerous Days is where the name of that documentary comes from. And then Hampton Fancher, who had started writing like the first versions of the movie, they're trying to think of something, and Ridley Scott didn't want to just call Harrison Ford a bounty hunter or whatever. He ends up being a part of the police department in the book. In the movie. In the book, he's just like a bounty hunter that works for the police. So I think it was Fancher that was like, there's this other book by Burroughs called Blade Runner.
Yeah, Burroughs had written. There is a book by another gentleman that wrote. That's called The Blade Runner, and that is about people who steal.
Yeah, that was Alan E. Norse wrote a book called The Blade Runner.
Yeah, and that book is about people who are the black market of stealing surgical equipment, which sounds like a pretty cool idea.
Yeah. And then it involves like a virus.
Yeah, something. And then Burroughs wrote a screenplay adaptation that I think never got done.
Burroughs was hired to kind of write like
the William S. Burroughs.
William S. Burroughs wrote basically what was gonna a treatment, or even the beginnings of a script that was going to maybe be a film adaptation of Alan E. Norse's book, The Blade Runner. So eventually, because William S. Burroughs sells books, he can sell a book, they decided to release like that treatment / like screenplay as a William S. Burroughs book called Blade Runner, a movie. And so that term Blade Runner kind of stuck with Hampton Fancher, and he's like, there's this other thing that I know from Burroughs called Blade Runner. What do you think of that? And Ridley Scott liked it, so Ridley Scott went and like bought the title.
Yeah, he optioned the title, and then also,
but the Norse book seems much more more of a science fiction type story that's talking a lot about the plight of healthcare, which seems very relevant, especially these days.
And even
about like how some people can have it and some people don't, and you have to have certain preconditions. I haven't read it, but reading up on it, it sounds very totally relevant,
forward thinking for the time. A lot of these sci-fis are. Even Ridley Scott wanted to call this at one point Gotham City, but then he couldn't get the rights from Bob Kane because of Batman. So they went with Blade Runner. And I don't know if it was Peoples or what's his face, the first
Fancher.
guy, Fancher's niece. One of their nieces was studying, bioengineering, and she came up with the idea of the name replicant,
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah,
because of the idea of science cells replicating and stuff like that. So she came up with the idea for the screenwriter, like, oh, you can turn, and then he said, I think he put it together. One of the two guys, we'll call them replicants, because in the book they're called, as you said, androids, or they call them specifically Andes, as in the movie it's replicant or skin jobs. And they never make the distinction in the book of why. In the movie they settle a question very early on, which I'm very happy about. There's why, the two questions: why can't they be on Earth, and what has happened to them not to want them have them on Earth? So in the movie, they quickly say that there was an uprising at some point, and now any escaped androids will have to be killed, retired, and we have these things called Blade Runners going after them. And they also give away the 4-year, they explain away the 4-year life in the movie, because they say, I guess scientists or genetic engineers realized after around the 4-year mark, these replicants start developing emotions.
Yeah, I'll let you finish where you're going, but that's a whole thing that I want to talk about.
So the fear of, I guess the speculation or the conjecture is that if they develop emotions, they could freak out, they could whatever, and then it could lead to like some sort of bloodbath. And that's the reasoning in the movie behind the 4-year lifespan, and the reason why they don't want these escaped androids coming to Earth, the replicants, because of whatever. In the book, they say they only can live 4 years because that's as far along as the cells or science has been able to figure it out. After the 4-year mark, they start deteriorating. They can't figure it out yet, and they're trying to. Yeah. And then they never really, for me, unless I've missed it, they don't really say specifically why. They never quote an uprising or whatever. They do for the specific instant of this group coming off-world colony in the book. In the book, yeah. But they never say that there was a precedent that happened, that now there is a fear, and that because of that fear they've had to develop these bounty hunters. We do know in the book that there was this incident that happened where these 8 or how many, there's more in the book, they break away, they come down, and now they've assimilated, some of them even have false memories. And that is the reason, they don't want them here living among us. But it's not really delineated specifically as it is clearly, because I think these are questions that the movie had to, in script meetings, like we have to figure out why do we even have this conflict with these things? Why can't they come down here? You know what I mean? Sure. So it become,
okay. So there's some things I want to talk about, because I find this stuff the most interesting for me in the book. I mean, in the movie. We're going to get confused back and forth.
We're just going to say apologize to everybody. Until we go back and listening, we realize for an hour we've been saying it backwards. Yeah.
But, so in the book, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? Yes. Dick's big intention, Philip K. Dick's big intention, like we said, was these androids are missing a very fundamental piece of humanity. They're missing something that really is what makes them human, and that's the difference.
The empathy.
The empathy thing. But in both cases, they're really, the only reason why these androids or replicants exist is because basically for like manual labor on Mars to build like
off-world colony. Yeah, they're building off the American colony states on Mars. So basically,
that's why they're not here. Yeah, they're made for that.
They're made to allure people off. You get one if you they're. It almost, to me, too, sounds like a complete other story that isn't told. Yeah. Almost like a Soylent Green-esque kind of a thing. Like, what is actually going on up there that we don't know about?
Well, also because I think you read the Total Recall book.
Yeah, we can remember for your wholesale.
I didn't read it. I just know the movie, but it's like that's all on Mars. To me, it's like that's what's going on Mars.
Yeah, but it's very much
it's Arnold of the
all that fucked up shit. But you don't realize like what is really happening. They're trying to get people to leave, and I can't see them wanting because they're worried about your well-being. But they're trying to get people off, so they're incentivizing them by saying, if you go up there, you're going to get yourself your own, for free of charge, you'll get your own android, which will be your servant. And then, like you're saying, which they talk about in the movie, is to develop in these harsh environments, the mining, colonization, colonialism. They have these androids being developed to go do the dirty work that basically, 300 years ago we had slaves doing.
Yeah.
And the book is also a comment on, the past of colonization and slavery.
And the movie to a certain extent.
Yes. Yeah, because you're right, because that's what they even make mention to it, I think, specifically.
Yeah.
So in the book, that is one of the reasons why, in the sense to get off the world and to have people up there. So
my point is, kind of the motivations of the replicants / androids are kind of different from book to movie.
Yeah.
Very clearly in Blade Runner, one, yes, they think of themselves as slaves, but there's all this talk of it's whatever, it's horrible to live in fear. That's what it's like to be a slave, yada, yada, yada. But also there's a very clear intent, a very clear motivation by Rutger Hauer, Roy Batty in the movie, which is, we're only going to live for 4 years. We want to extend our lifespan.
Yeah. It's not fair.
Whereas in the book,
they want to just escape and live.
They just want to live. They don't want to be slaves anymore.
Yeah, they just want to have some sort of life, to the point where you have one character, Luma Loft, I think her name is, and she comes down and she poses as an opera singer.
Yeah.
And she has this beautiful voice and she's amazing. And, and they just want to, they
want to blend in and live out that rest of their 4-year lifespan.
Yeah, and they're not committing crimes. And that's where the double standard, the hypocrisy within the book of the characters is that it becomes a crime in this post-nuclear war world not to care for animals, and people embrace that. So they go bend over backwards for animals, where, in my personal opinion, I think people should. But the hypocrisy comes in where you have these other things that are basically as well like a Frankensteinian kind of,
that's exactly it.
And and they kind of want the same thing, and it becomes the distinction of, why do you care so much about this, but you don't care about that? And it becomes it's a very tough question that the bounty hunter Rick Deckard in the book starts to realize very quickly, and it becomes one of these stories, much like in Apocalypse Now, or a character where you go out on the last job, and what ends up happening is, do you end up becoming what you're hunting? You see that in a lot of Westerns,
Sure.
In going after these killers, you become a killer, or you become what you hate because you go to that level.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because as a bounty hunter, Deckard in the book, he is them. I mean, he does not have empathy for them.
No, nobody does.
It wasn't, but he develops it.
Yes, he starts
through that's his journey.
Yeah.
as like the main character of the.
He becomes so conflicted. Like, what am I doing? Some of these, especially when he has to retire that Luma Loft character, the opera singer.
Yeah.
He's like, this is such a talent, because he in the book he collects old tapes, unquote, quote unquote, of like old opera singers and stuff. Mm-hmm. So he has an affinity for opera music, say. So he's able to talk to her to try to get her to take the test and pose, and that we see that with Harrison Ford a little bit when he's trying to get Joanna Cassidy, because she's the representation of that character in the movie, the snake woman. He is like, why am I even killing this thing? Because this could bring so much to humanity, the arts and all that kind of thing. And the character has such an appreciation for the arts. They have to go. They go confront her in a museum, and she's looking at paintings and she's asking these philosophical questions. So it becomes very.
That's his journey. He starts to develop empathy for them. In the book, there's this character named Isidore.
Yes.
And he's really like the main character.
He's
the book.
He's the B plot.
There's but he's got a really huge part.
Yeah.
In the book,
and that's
and he's been kind of chopped down to be J.F. Sebastian
in the movie.
And that's which is a very small part, but significant, but small.
And that's what I don't. This is where I have some kind of problems personally with the movie, that there's so much that's undeveloped there. Where the B plot of the book is that there's this chicken head he's a special. He has the fallout. He's been deemed he can never immigrate or migrate off world, so he's stuck here. He's living by himself in an apartment building, only one in the apartment building. He works for this Van Ness pet hospital, and it's one of these places that maintain robotic animals. And he drives the truck to pick things up like that. And it's one of these situations where the character thinks he's stupid. He's told he's stupid, but I can't think of an example offhand, but it's one of these things where he's actually very intelligent.
Yeah.
But he doesn't realize it because he's been told, and he thinks himself by Buster Friendly and everybody else, the government, that you're stupid, you can't reproduce, you can't whatever.
Well, the thing that...
Because he has some of the most profound kind of thoughts in the book.
But it's also, I don't know. That's literature.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm sure you can think of scores of characters that you find that with.
Yeah,
you find like the quote unquote dummy or
the child.
Yeah,
or we used to have a writing teacher that always talked about like the homeless guy.
Yes,
is always the one that has the most profound things to say in a script.
Yeah, and you have that with this guy, and he. At the very beginning, which is such a touching thing for me in the book, is he picks up a cat. And the owner gives him the cat, and he's like, it's not working. It started acting up at night. Can you have it fixed? And leaves for work. And he's bringing it back in the truck, and it's making all these kind of noises. And then it stops, and he pulls the truck over to try to fix it. He tries to find the circuit board to open it up and reset it, and he's like, I can't find it. Brings it to the home base of the pet hospital, and the head pet guy there, the surgeon, realizes it's a real cat, and they're like, oh my God. And you get the fact like that they're so taken aback, and it's so horrifying, and it's such a you get the heaviness of a real life dying.
Yeah, I mean that's what's interesting,
and that's the first part of the book of his character arc.
Yeah, what's interesting for me is in the book, it's really like Isidore and Deckard are foils. I mean, they're very much played that way in terms of like they're almost splitting the narrative. But it's like Isidore is the embodiment of empathy in this world.
Yeah.
Whereas Deckard is
forced to not be.
Yeah, he doesn't have
his job.
It to a certain extent. I mean, he has his issues with his wife, and that makes him very human. But at the same time,
he's also burnt out, like we talk about in the movie. He stopped. They got to call him back for that one last job because of what's happened. His William Holden, but his Holden, his partner, it's just like in the movie. The other bounty hunters nearly killed because of what happened. We see in the first scene in the movie. So he has to take over, and then he has to try to like retire like 6 androids in 2 days. And he's like, how? No one's ever done that,
Yeah.
And
but
he's forced to.
In the book, it's like they're like those are the two characters that are kind of linked. They're, like I said, they're foils. Isidore's all empathy. Deckard has to learn to be empathetic throughout this thing. Whereas in the movie, it's really it's Batty and Deckard,
Harrison Ford,
that are really the ones that are. They're more like opposites almost, instead of
Sebastian is used more of a device in the book to propel the story, to be able to link them, to be able to get to the Tyrell Corporation, where in the book he's a source for a lot of the plot, like you're saying.
But it's like, because Batty he's a big part of he's a significant part of the book, but not in relation to Deckard.
Yeah, but he's not even as big as I enjoy in the movie the expansion of the character and the fleshing out of Rutger Hauer as Batty, where in the book it's more of a group or an ensemble of the androids, and you learn about other ones.
But this is where it's this in both aspects, but more specifically in the movie, and it's kind of something you touched on, is what, like, watching it now several times, watching it a few times now for this, watching it over the years, the thing that I've really come to really like about the book is it is this like Frankenstein tale. It's
book or the movie?
Both. Okay. Really. I mean, in the book they stay kind of unempathic.
Yeah, he even talks about when he's giving them the test. He's seen it before, where when they realize they've been caught, the androids, they kind of turn off, and they start, and it's a reaction they get when they realize they're cornered.
It doesn't really, in the book, it's like there is that question of like, what's humanity? What does it mean to be human? And we've created these beings. Is it right to just make them slaves and not give them their own life? Whereas in the movie, you're talking about how there's the 4-year lifespan is given them because they might have emotion, and after that 4 years, you don't know what that emotion is going to lead to. It could lead to them going crazy or whatever. To me, it's like my interpretation of the movie is And we get it with Rutger Hauer's character because we find out by the end of the movie that he's very close to the end of his lifespan. Like, he dies, like, in the end of the movie.
Yeah,
Spoiler
we don't realize that until when we watch the first scene. You see Rutger Hauer is he's having the issues where his hand shutting down.
To me, it's not so much they're worried about, are they going to go crazy? Are they going to kill people if they live past 4 years? To more, it's like, we don't want them to live past more than 4 years, because past more than 4 years, they become human.
Yeah. And we don't know what to do.
Then it's like, we can't do anything with them because it's like, they're now really human. But
do you think the fear
we
is...
find that Rutger Hauer is human by the end of the movie.
Do you think the fear is that they'll... The hypocritical fear is that they think they're going to freak out and revolt, or that you're saying that they're going to become human, and in the context of the movie that they're
I think it could be. I mean, clearly they're stronger. That's the big difference between Philip K. Dick and Ridley Scott, which is Philip K. Dick's view of the androids is that they are less than human, and they're missing that thing. That doesn't necessarily mean that they don't have rights, but because he's viewing them, like he said, like not like the Nazis. But in the Ridley Scott's view is that they're superhuman. They're Superman.
They can do.
They're superior to humans
because they have to do this stuff and off-world stuff.
I think there is that fear that you could have like that Terminator fear that like once they have emotion, they realize what the fuck's going on. They realize that they
gang
can
up
very easily
take over and become Skynet and stuff.
Yeah, I could see that. To me, it was much more of like an emotional, philosophical. Moral issue, which is like once they become human, like can we keep them slaves?
With the morality of it.
I'm certainly reading that into it. But you do see, I mean, the most human character in the movie is Rutger Hauer by the end, and though he does horrible things, he kills people in the movie, and we're led to believe that he killed people to get to Earth. His motivations are one that we can all empathize with, which is like he just wants to live.
Yeah, he's doing it to...
What would we all... If we all knew that we had an expiration date and we thought there was any possibility that we could extend it, like what would we all be capable of? We would try to do that. Capable of. It was this Frankensteinian aspect of like... which... unfortunately is not really clear in many of the film adaptations of Mary Shelley's book, but more so in the book itself, which is we wondered so much, could we do it? We never just stopped to think about whether we should. We created this life, and we're now mistreating it. We're not taking the responsibility. We've created life, but yet we're not taking the responsibility of treating it human.
Now that's
if we look back and like we've established, they're kind of slaves in both the book and in the movie. But if we look back just a couple hundred years ago, this idea of, say, a slave owner, this white guy who owns these black slaves, selling a child to another slave owner, taking a child away from a mother and giving it with the, and literally thinking to themselves, justification of like, they don't feel the way we do.
Yeah.
They
weren't even, with the voting right, they weren't even human.
They're property.
Yeah. To be sold.
These Africans that we've brought over here to the quote unquote new world or whatever, it's property. They're not human. They don't feel the way they do. They're different. We can treat them this way. That's what's going. That's the big question of like the replicants. Like we've created them, but like they don't feel like we do. If we let them live long enough, they would. But we're not. But we find
don't want
out
to get to that dilemma.
But the beauty of the movie is that they do, and Sean Young feels. Sean Young has this whole other dilemma that she doesn't even realize it.
Now, I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, and the other aspect of it is because they're 4 years old, and part of the empathy thing that's going on in the book, which is that the androids never really acquire empathy, and this idea of the replicants not having empathy, I feel like I mean, they're children.
Yeah, that's what I think a great thing about the movie explores.
There's this very horrific thing that I've seen in New York City, and I've almost witnessed it. I've witnessed it with Dion, too, in that if you see, specifically little boys, but if you see little boys in New York City see pigeons.
No, I don't want to talk about this.
Their first instinct is to, like, kick them.
Run after them.
Or step on them. You know, it's like... They don't have empathy for it's a horrible thing to look at human like the human nature.
Now you're getting to what I want to,
which is that, like, if you look at that instance, or you see, like, I remember being in a park and being with wanting to feed ducks or swans, but then you see other little kids, like, skipping rocks at them. Yeah. Like, it's almost like empathy for living things has to almost be taught to humanity.
Yeah.
Which is horrifying.
Now,
it's a horrifying thing. And so can you blame an android whose lifespan is only 4 years for not having empathy when it seems pretty clear in many cases, maybe not all, in real life humans, that it's something that really needs to be taught to them.
Yeah, or cultivated in some kind of way, or encouraged, because without it they can very easily.
I think specifically, I mean, I've seen it more in boys than girls. Girls seem to be more nurturing towards animals, but it does seem that, like, little kids, like, I'm talking like 5, younger than 5, like, their instinct is to be rough and try to hurt things.
The paradox in the book is basically that the android lives in fear because of the lack of empathy, but then, the Deckard himself is dehumanizing himself by going after these things.
It's all about they're not human, so we're not killing them.
So
if they were never born, then they're not taking away their life because they're never really alive, etc.
Now,
justification.
Philip K. Dick was a huge animal rights person. Loved cats in particular. Was a very big, and that's kind of ahead of its time. You think about that in the '60s and stuff, where you're starting to see a lot of that nowadays, where people are starting to finally worry about the plight of animals and stuff like that, myself included. Mm-hmm. In recent years, I've gotten a big heart for animals in general. So you were talking about the slave aspect. It seems in...
Yeah, I was a little bit all over the place.
But in this...
I was trying to make a lot of points.
Yeah, but you see in the slave aspect that Philip K. Dick adopts that idea and brings it into the book in the late 60s, that... Even at that point, people, like you're saying right now, give an example where people don't care about animals nowadays and what happens to them.
The thing with, and we're not even slavery. You don't even have to go back to slavery to see that people don't feel that, black people that had rights.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? I mean, that's less than a century ago.
Yeah, and you have now where people... Or you still have the issue where you're saying...
And very much 1968.
Yeah, right. In the real civil rights movement, they're trying to still get the freedom to vote and stuff like that, and just have full rights and to integrate.
Sit in the same restaurant.
Yeah, and drink out of the same fountain and stuff like that, especially down in the South. So you have... He takes that idea to today, that argument you were saying about property and not thinking, and you can take that and you take that with animals now.
Sure.
People are having, like, say, up in the Bronx where we live in New York City, people have litters of puppies and cats, and they don't think anything of it. Like, oh shit, they're going to breed them to fight or whatever, and they don't care. And then once it's not their responsibility, and just because they can do it doesn't mean they just think of them as property. So these poor things, who knows how they're going to live out their lives. And this was a thing where Philip K. Dick envisioned this world where in the future we've done such catastrophe to the world that we now know what we've lost. So we empathize so much and care so much about animals, which we haven't even got to today in 21st century, where we're starting to care about these animals. So getting to today's times, where you still have this issue where people don't care about animals to a certain extent. You are called an environmentalist, or you're called, if you're a PETA lover or whatever. As an example, I specifically thought, I don't know if I was going to be able to bring this up, but last week, every Monday I walk my dog in Scarsdale, New York, in Westchester, in this neighborhood. I'll take him for a big walk. In this nice homes, it's upscale neighborhood, sure. Very nice, very much like Dick Van Dyke, that area of Dick Van Dyke Show. And there's this elementary school that I pass. And every day around 12:30, when I'm walking around there, the school has recess and the kids are out, So last Monday of this recording, I'm walking my dog, and I'm watching by the batting boxes a group of kids in a circle, guys and girls, and they're like, oh, look at the butterfly, and they're trying to stomp this butterfly.
Yeah.
And there's about 5 or 6 kids, like boys, like, I'm saying they're probably like 7 or 8. Guys and girls trying to stomp this butterfly. And I was horrified. This is something like out of the beginning of like, what's the name of that movie? The Wild Bunch, where the kids are like, having the ants take over the scorpion, then they light the fire, and that was like a game that the general in the movie, the Mexican actor, said like to what's his face, who's the director? Peck and Paul, like, oh, we used to play that as children, and like what you're saying, what we see in the city all the time, where you see kids just run up and try to people hate pigeons in the city. They call them like, flying rats. And I've come to the point now where I actually carry birdseed on me. I try to feed these poor things because nobody cares about these.
No, I mean, you see some of them because of the winter. Like some of them, like don't even have feet.
Yeah, they're limping, or they look like they've been dipped in oil. Their feathers are all tarred, and they're just trying to eat. They're not trying to, they're not trying to.
They just want to live.
Yeah, they just want to live. And people, it's one of these things where people completely don't care about the indigenous, well, they're not indigenous because they were brought over here, but now the indigenous populations of where they live. So I actually went and told on, I went and grabbed, I mean, call me melodramatic, but I went and told like a school monitor. I was like, this is like, these kids are like
Lord of the Flies shit.
It's like a fucking horror movie over here, But it's an example of like children just, children are supposed to be the purest of humanity, and like you're saying, they have to be taught empathy.
Well, that's the scary thing, is like that's what.
So if you have a parent that's not going to teach, if the parent doesn't value a cat or a dog or whatever, a spider. I mean, I remember as a kid stomping on ants, now I won't kill anything. My wife and I have like one of these PETA things that it's like a box thing where if you find a spider in your house, you could
scoop it up.
Yeah, scoop it up, and then you could put it out. Yeah, we do that. I don't kill anything, but it's like, you just think about all the killing that's done in the world, and so to the point you're making to come around here is like that. There's this real lack of empathy where people think, and that's a lot of the hypocrisy with people, in my personal opinion. Like my wife's a vegan, and there's a lot of people who say they're like we used to say in college. We used to have these people who say they were vegans, but they wear leather shoes, they wear leather pants, or people who want to save the environment, but they're meat eaters. Or it's like, well, if you're going to want to save the environment, you should be a vegan, because the big carbon imprint is all the dairy in the meat industry, that the cost to feed all these animals that they're bringing to slaughter. You want to save the environment, you become a vegan, So there's that hypocrisy where people can say, oh, I'm a very nice person, I donate to all these causes, but then they'll want to go kick a pigeon in the street, or run something over because they don't care. So it comes up there where Dick takes this idea of the animal thing where, people have come around and they love animals so much only because we've killed them all off. Now we have the idea of there's these androids or replicants who are basically now becoming the pseudo-animal in the situation, and they're wanting to have, animals. You're starting to realize now where there's the sentient beings or things have, and people are starting to realize now, like, oh, dogs and cats can have emotions, or cows or animals. You could, if you sit down
the
with
intelligence of a 4-year-old kid.
Yeah,
pigs,
pigs are supposedly more intelligent than a dog or a cat. If you cultivate the thing right, the animal, like my dog is like a little kid. He's very moody. He'll tell me what he wants, where he wants to go, like that. But it's also the upbringing. So you take that and you put it into the situation of these androids now, where these androids just want the same thing, but you're not deemed, they're just an animal, they're a robot, So it all comes around now. And then what I think the brilliant thing is that's not really explored in the book, that's explored in the movie, is what you said at the end of what you were saying, is that these things now are only 4 years old, so they're reacting to situations as a child would.
Yeah.
And I find that brilliant. Like you have Byron James's character, he's full of rage. He doesn't understand things. And his first reaction is to like hurt something. Rutger Hauer, when he meets Sebastian, he's like, "You got a lot of great toys around here, And it's so cool that their reactions,
well, even in the book, there's a significant scene in the book, which is Isidore, the Sebastian character from the movie. His parallel in the book is this Isidore character. He finds a spider. Oh, this is terrible. This is something that really upset me when I read the book a couple times, because now, like I said, I have such a bleeding heart for animals, and it's something that I find so traumatizing
to reread, and then we listened to the BBC audio version.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Thankfully, they included it in there.
Yeah.
But I don't think you get the full impact.
There's this BBC radio play of it,
which I have some issues with, which I'll talk to you
Which is
with
only
later.
like 2 hours long.
Well, we'll put a link in the cast to listen to it.
And they try to kind of combine the movie and the book a little bit, but the book is like a 9-hour thing. It's a full novel.
It's 300 pages.
Like trying to
condense it. It's hard to bridge
it's like doing a movie.
Yeah,
doing a radio play.
But thankfully they include this part in the radio play, which I wish they kept in the movie.
He finds this spider, and like we've established in this discussion, Isidore in the book is like the embodiment of empathy. He's like he's our empathetic. Embodiment in the book.
Just to stop you before you go on. So what happens in the book is he shows up, and instead in the movie, to further the plot, they realize they need Sebastian to get to Tyrell, the corporation. So that's why they send Daryl Hannah after to meet him purposely. In the book, Pris, the Daryl Hannah character, just shows up to hide. He hears her downstairs and is like, "Hey, there's someone else in the house, and she's gorgeous. How are you?" So he strikes up a conversation. He's like, and he feels good about himself, and he's like, "Oh, I'm going to have a friend now." And then, as the book progresses, Batty shows up with somebody else,
married to
another girl, Ingrid, I think her name is, and they come over. And then when they're over the house, and suddenly he's kind of out of his element.
Yeah, he's like the third wheel.
Yeah, and they're like, "Go get some stuff for us." And he goes outside to get something. Is where you say he finds this spider in the book.
He finds the spider, and of course we've established that in the book. Animal life is a huge thing.
It's unheard of to find anything in the wild.
Yeah, to find like this live thing.
Yeah,
is
in this dust and
it's crazy. So he brings it back to show them, and they're like, "Why does it have so many legs? Like what? It doesn't need so many legs. What if we cut some of its legs off? It should still be able to walk,
legs, right? I bet you it only needs 4." And he starts freaking out. But he stutters. He has problem vocalizing, and he gets upset. So they sit down at the kitchen table, and they take shears and they start cutting one at a time. And this is an example, I think, that you'd have problems kind of showing in the movie, which I wish they were able to overcome. But in the book, it shows them.
And of course, then he's like, the thing is like, this could be the last fucking spider.
Yeah, and they don't care. But in the book, it hits at home to realize that the reason why they don't have empathy in the book. This is a pure example of them not being.
But my point is, this is a perfect parallel of like, this is totally the kind of thing a kid would do.
Yeah, nowadays.
That's like the whole thing is what I'm saying is like, they're kids. I mean, it's not even so much that they don't have empathy. Like, I don't believe that kids have empathy. Like, this is totally the kind of thing like a regular kid doesn't know any better.
With a magnifying glass trying to set an ant on fire.
Burning ants on fire. Like, this is total child behavior. Yeah. And it's horrifying to look at, and it's especially horrifying to look at. We're seeing the context of adults doing it, even though they're androids. But it's why they need to be, retired. Which is like, that's the big question. It's like is this not human behavior?
Yeah, they should be taught.
This is almost human behavior in its purest form.
Yeah.
Like, this is like the default mode for humans.
And it transcends 50 years to like our conversation now, where this is still something you have with children. You have that with, I'd say, at least 60 to 70% of the population towards animals in general. We gave an example of New York with the pigeons and stuff like that. But this
is unfortunately what human nature is actually like. It has to be corrected, which is, I guess, part of human nature also. But like, human nature at its most basic form is this kind of like an unempathic, like primal need to destroy. So in a way, like, I just find that interesting because the whole thing with the pigeon has been something I've been thinking about a lot this summer, because I've seen some pretty horrifying behavior, not only from kids but also from adults.
I do too.
In the city,
it just drives me. This has been happening to me for years, and I've told people off about it.
So when we translate this to the movie, you're right. Like, this childlike behavior. I mean, you can't. We even talked about it a little bit in the Warriors, where it's like in the book that the Warriors is based on, they're much younger than they are in the movie.
Yeah, they're teens.
In the movie, they're like in their 20s, but some of their behavior seems very immature, and it's like, it's almost because like that source material, they're so young. It seems like such an immature reaction when like Ajax gets caught by the police, and he's like,
it's
almost the way like a kid would react.
Juvenile.
That kind of like the way that replicants are portrayed in the movie. and on so many viewings has become like my favorite thing about the movie. And
well, you start to realize they are developing those emotions, which is kind of sad. Like with him, with Roy's interaction with Pris, you know, she substitutes in the movie his wife in the book, and then they have kind of a romance.
The one thing I think would have been interesting that's in the book that's not in the movie is that Rachel and Pris in the book are the same model.
Yeah, so
they have Android. They look exactly the same. I love that.
So what happens is, as in the movie, you know, the first thing the guy, his captain says, we want you to go to the corporation and test them out to see if the test will work. And in the book, it's the Rosen Corporation, not Tyrell. And the issue is that in Leningrad, some scientists who came up with the Voight empathy test,
the Mein Kampf test,
they've proposed the idea that the test may not work on people in mental institutions like schizophrenics or you know, people with mental deficiencies. So the really, really, really big question that people are worried about is what happens if you test someone and they're human, but they test wrong and you retire them and then you kill a real person. So if that were to happen, that would be the biggest, like...
which Rachel asks in the movie.
Yes, exactly.
Have you ever retired a human?
Yeah, it's hinted at. So in the book, he goes up to the corporation. He meets Eldon Rosen, who's Eldon Tyrell in the movie, and he insists to take the test. He has he meets the girl, which is his niece or daughter in the book. She takes the test, and then she passes the test, and they're like they almost start kind of strong-arming him, like, you know, you like that owl out there, you know, we'll give you the owl if you just say blah blah blah. And you know,
they've told them the owl is real.
Yeah, they tell him the owl is real
in the book
because we talked about how big owls are, and that's why, you know,
it was the first animal to go extinct.
Yeah. And they kind of try to make a deal with him. If you go back and say that the Voight Kampf test worked, you know, well, we won't tell anything because they're worried about because they're a company. They don't want anything to happen with their production line. And then halfway through, when he's about to leave, you know, he's believing like shit. You know, I'm fucked. This didn't work right. You know, this was a complete disaster. My boss is gonna be pissed. Rachel slips up and says it instead of his or her with the owl.
Yeah.
So he sits back down, he puts the thing back up, he asks one more question, and then he realizes she's fake. And then she leaves the room, and then, as in the movie, he says to Roach, does she know she's fake? And then there's that whole conversation. She's a replicant, or she's an Andy. Does she know? And then we learn that there's new models that, you know, we're starting to give them memories, or we're starting to give them certain things. Where am I going with this? So, like you're saying, in the movie, halfway through, in the book, when he's getting exhausted, he calls her up to help her. He calls Rachel at the corporation in the book to have her come down and help get the last bunch, like, which is Pris and Batty and Batty's wife. So she comes down and he ends up sleeping with her, which is much like the movie. He kind of falls in love with her because of what's going on with his relationship with his wife. He's stuck in a mire with her being depressed. Who knows if they have a sex life?
Getting some strange.
Yeah, he ends up, you know, falling for her. He says, "I love you. Do you love me? I'd marry you if I can." You know, even though we're not even supposed to copulate with androids. You know, and on the way back, she slips up and she says to him, like, you know, because she slips up, and it's realized that she was actually sent down there to not make him go through and kill the other Nexus 6s. And it's discovered that she's done this 7 or 8 times with other bounty hunters, where he thought she was genuinely having these feelings for him, and then that they had sex because of the two of them.
Special. I thought this was special.
Yeah, and in fact, she becomes completely heartless and completely unempathetic, and she's like, no, this is what I do with everybody else. And then he says, I'm gonna fucking kill you, and she's like, that's the reaction every other bounty hunter has too. Yep, you know, I've been there, done it, and it becomes real frightening. But what's talked about, getting around what you're saying, is that she's the exact same model and look as Pris. So he was having these struggles when he was going on the last job to the apartment building.
So when he tries to go to get Pris,
he's like, am I going to be able to do it?
He has all these emotions that he has for Rachel.
Yeah, and he's like, am I going to be able, just because she may have a different hairstyle, it's going to be her, she's going to sound the same, she's going to look the same, am I going to be able to pull that trigger, or am I going to see Rachel in Pris's form, which is, I think, a great device too.
Which is something I do wish kind of got translated over to, you know, the movie a little bit.
And then I think the last thing for the book is there's this subplot of when he goes to kill the opera singer calls the cops. the cops come, and the cops have no idea who he is. And he's like, what are you talking about? And they bring him to another police station. He's like, this isn't the right police station. And then there's all these cops there, and he's like, what the... And then he starts questioning himself, like, shit, maybe I'm a freaking replicant or an android. Maybe I've had these false memories. And they bring another bounty hunter in, and then you come to find out in the course of the couple scenes that these are all androids, and it's been set up to help androids who are like... what do you call that? Like smuggling, or they're
I guess it's like the Underground Railroad.
Yeah, it's like an underground thing, to try to get them away to like some other place in the world,
kind of assimilate them back into.
And he finds this place out. He kills the one android in there. Him and the other bounty hunter that was assigned to that police station, who now is starting to question, like, wait a minute, am I real or not? They both go back to kill the opera singer, and then there's a really great scene where in an elevator they kill the opera singer, and she's screaming, and he's like, oh my God. And then the other bounty hunter puts her out of her misery. He's basically with what Deckard's supposed to be. He's completely, unemotional about the situation. And he's like, well, maybe this is because I'm a robot. So they sit down, they take the test, and come to find out that bounty hunter isn't a robot. But he's actually working as Deckard should be, and that's why Deckard's starting to question, can I do this job anymore? Because he's acting how I should be, but I find it so appalling. Yeah. And I love that aspect of him with the other guy, Phil Lesh, I think his name is, with the Van Dyke. It's such a great dichotomy, and that's a whole cool subplot in the it's cumbersome in the book, but it's cool, the idea of which they kind of put in the subplot of the movie is he a replicant or not? That's discussed in the book, but he's given himself the test in the book, and he's not an android in the book.
Well, like that scene when he gets brought into the police station in the book, and that of like what's going on, it's like very Twilight Zone-y. That I loved, but it's also, like you said, it's kind of cumbersome in the book. Like that's part of my thing with the book, was like there's just things about it I didn't like about the book, but it's like, because like that's a great scene, but it's almost unimportant.
And
it's just kind of like in there, like that could be a book in and of itself. Like that could be like a whole movie. It's like that.
And then the idea that
but it only lasts like a handful of pages.
Because they got to get back onto the plot A.
That's what I mean. It's like the book. And then the idea clunky, just like the movies.
And then the idea of the veracity of these androids to hire a real bounty hunter to be there, and then with the balls, and then
this whole fake android police station.
And then he also retired. He's supposed to come. There's a Russian guy coming over to watch him take out these new Nexus 6s. He gets him into the car, and they have a conversation. He quickly realizes that this is one of the escaped androids posing as a Russian cop, and he kills him in the car. And he does that before he goes after the opera singer. So that's another great thing in the book, with the brazenness of these androids, where sometimes you hide in the most obvious plain sight, where one's become an opera singer, the other one is now hiding within the police department. Some of them are electing to stay a little longer on Mars and have the total recall thing done to them, and they get their mind completely burnt, and then they get false memories, so they don't know themselves that they're an android. And that was the dilemma that the other Phil, I think is Lesh is his last name, the other bounty hunter had. Am I a replicant or an android who just had his memory erased? Because some of the androids are saying to him, like, we remember you, you are an android. And he's like, fuck, am I? So it gets really fucked up in the movie, so those are the aspects about the book I really love.
So that's the big things about them.
The book that's different from and it'd be cool that, you have these, like you have Westworld now on HBO, and it'd be really cool if you take HBO or a Netflix series and do a faithful version, an adaptation of the book.
Androids.
Yeah, I think that'll become really cool, because for me, as I was thinking about the dilemma, are they robots or are they just genetically engineered people? It's kind of like Westworld is on HBO now, where they're not really mechanical. Earlier versions of them were, but they hit some sort of point where there must be they're almost genetically engineered, where they're people with blood. That's why when you shoot them, blood comes out and everything. They're not just like Terminators with an endoskeleton.
One thing that there's more we need to cover, and not a whole lot of time to cover it in. But one thing I do want to say,
eastbound and down. Got a long way to go.
Because I just recently, this past weekend, saw in the theater a trailer for the new Blade Runner 2049. Now, if you watch Dangerous Days, you hear them talk about like an original opening,
which is the dock.
Yeah, Dangerous Days, the documentary on.
I love that original opening that they.
That looks like it's in the new movie. That scene is in the trailer, which is basically the scene is. They
storyboarded it, but they never put it in. It was going to be the original. They wanted to. Ridley Scott was like, I want to open the movie with a bang, and then this was the idea. What Blake's about to say,
which is like we're like on a farm or something, and it's very rural.
And there's big machines.
There's like a cottage, but you see these machines in the distance, which is like cultivating the land.
Yeah, corn or whatever.
And, this guy gets out of one of the machines, comes into the cottage, and Deckard is sitting like in the cottage.
Well, Deckard comes in his car, comes to the farmhouse, and the machines are very much like if people just saw Logan. It's those big machines in the background at that scene with the farming. Yeah. No one's in the cottage. He gets in. There's soup on a stove going, percolating. He sits down, and I guess maybe time lapse. It gets dark, and then you're saying someone comes into the cottage. This big guy goes over to almost to have the soup. Realizes there's a guy sitting in the chair, but we don't know who that person is at this moment. But it's the Deckard character we're going to learn later on. And I think the person just continues on, and then he says like, "You want some soup?" Nothing is said. He kind
of realizes
what's happening,
what's afoot.
Yeah,
but it ends with Deckard shooting him.
Yeah, and this is supposed to surprise the audience. It's like, why is this guy just coming in and killing this guy?
Where is this? What is going on? Yeah. Why did he just shoot this guy? But then he goes over and he opens the guy's mouth and like pulls out his jaw, which is like a mechanical jaw to signify that he's a robot, and then gets like the serial number off the jaw or whatever. But if you watch the new trailer, it looks like, I don't know how it ends. I mean, who knows how they rewrite it? But it's like the guy who played Batista in the WWE comes walking into a cottage, and you see like Ryan Gosling sitting like in the corner, and it's like,
and there's soup on the stove. Oh geez, I didn't see. I've been purposely, nowadays I try not to do spoilers. I think I've said this in the other cast, so I try not to.
So I don't know if I don't know where in the movie, or it might, sometimes there's just stuff in the movie in a trailer that's not in the movie, but it looks like they revisited that original opening scene that isn't in the movie.
Yeah, there's such cool things in this movie that they thought up. Like to jump around for a second now. At the end here, when Roy Batty in the movie confronts Joe Turkel, Tyrell, and he ends up killing him, there's this scene that they did that they didn't shoot that they were thinking of doing, which I thought would have been fucking brilliant, is that when he takes his head and crushes him, he's an android himself.
He realizes that Tyrell is an android.
Yeah, and then they realize that they're like we said before, that the Tyrell Corporation is this big pyramid, that they find this secret room in this sarcophagus, very much like an Egyptian kind of a thing, is the real Tyrell, or Rosen. And he's been dead for like 4 or 5 years, but the company was worried about letting that get public because they didn't want the stock to get devalued. So they made a replacement. And that's a lot of the themes you see with Westworld now. Is Anthony Hopkins a replicant or android? So a lot of these themes are being borrowed or taken from like these stories and put into other properties. But I thought that would have been such a cool thing, And that's so almost more disheartening, wouldn't have been for Roy Batty to realize that he's not even talking to the real person. He's talking to, his father died 4 or 5 years ago. So
there's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, let's get on, I guess, the page of the book. Let's get on the page of the movie.
I mean, there's like things that aren't necessarily things that I found that didn't really seem to be talked about much in the Dangerous Days documentary.
Okay.
Like for instance, the quote. The William Blake quote that Batty says to Hannibal Chew.
Oh, that's from the American poem. The
America, a Prophecy from 1793.
When Batty comes in and meets Chew, and he's like, "Oh, I have your eyes," the first thing he says a quote from a poem.
But he misquotes it. The real quote is, "Fiery the angels rose, deep thunder rolled around their shores, burning the fires of Orc."
And what's the poem called?
It's called America, a Prophecy.
Yeah, so it's apropos.
It was published in 1793.
It's apropos because it's almost talking about the new frontier of America. And and then he's using it here with them.
Yeah, I mean, it's talking about the Orc in the mythology of William Blake is kind of like almost like a fallen angel, but he's the embodiment of rebellion. So the poem is about like the American Revolution and America rebelling against the British and forming what will be, the American democracy and stuff. And people look at that scene, and because Roy says when he comes in, he says this basically that quote, but he says instead of the fire angels rose, he says the angels fell. But some people look at that and just say like, they're rebelling, slaves rebelling against their masters or whatever, or kind of they're also they're like the fallen angels coming from descending from Mars to Earth. But if you look in like the context of the poem being about the rise of America, the rise of democracy, by saying that in the original poem, saying the fire angels rose, that's what it's about. By Roy, you can examine it and say by Roy saying the the angels fell, he's talking about like the fall of America, the fall of the democracy. It's like
when all the angels were cast out to hell, Lucifer and all, and by the great war the angels had with God, and so it's almost.
And Orc is also the character of Orc in the William Blake stuff is also talked about as being kind of maybe looked at as like the young striking down the old, which we see with Roy killing his father, stuff like that. So there's a lot of like these little things. The chess game,
it's great. The imitation, it's the what do you call it? It's the ultimate game or the imitation game?
The immortal game
from 1851.
The game between Sebastian and Tyrell. The moves that they're saying to each other from the elevator and stuff are mimicked, or they're taken from this legendary chess game that happened in 1851 it was kind of an informal game during the break of like a big tournament.
As you do.
Adolf Anderson and Lionel Kazaritsky.
It's funny because Ridley Scott says this was completely coincidental, which I don't believe, because that means someone on the film had to know what they were doing because you can't be this coincidental. But it's become such a huge thing in the world of chess, because in the game, the one person Anderson, he sacrifices his rook and his queen.
He sacrifices both rooks and a bishop, then his queen. So the idea is that
you're not supposed to do that.
This is a legendary game that he sacrifices all his really big pieces.
You're supposed to just sacrifice your pawns and use your big pieces, but what he does is he sacrifices his big pieces, and then with the minor pieces, the pawns, he's able to then...
He secures the checkmate.
Yeah, against the king, and then that's something that's legendary because you're sacrificing the important things, to get your end goal, and it's a great almost microcosm or a parallel to this story here of what they're doing.
Yeah, so you take the idea of sacrificing the big pieces and the pawns being the ones that are really fighting the battle in the chess game. We can look at the replicants as being, they're like kind of like pawns, and what they're seeking is immortality, which is this game is considered the immortal game because of like its significance, and
it's something that people don't ever do.
And if we look at Tyrell as being like the king, we see Roy coming in as kind of a lesser piece, the pawn coming in and striking down the king. So there's like this whole metaphorical thing going on between this immortal game from 1851 of chess,
and it's something that
and things that are happening within the movie, which I thought was kind of really interesting.
It's very interesting because it's something that you're not taught to do in chess, because if you're not an experienced player, it'll completely backfire on you. You're supposed to be taught a traditional way.
Basically sacrificing the big pieces for the overall good.
It's something that's not. Yeah, it's not really taught that way. Bobby Fischer ain't going to teach you that method, But that's why it's become...
Bobby Fischer ain't going to teach you that shit.
In that Bobby Fischer book, I'm Playing Chess, that I own. But it's something that has become such a classic game because it worked in that context. Anderson was able to secure the game and win the game by doing such a ballsy... Yeah. It's almost like... what's his face? Kirk reprogramming the Kobayashi Maru. The Kobayashi Maru can't win, but he programs it so that he can win it. So these
are the little things that obviously you don't need to know, but I thought they were cool little trivial things. There are bigger questions that we could maybe discuss, but it depends on where Dion would like to go with this.
Well, I don't know. I mean, there's just there's all the little bits of the movie that we don't really have time to get through.
Yeah. But let's tackle the big questions, like replicant or human. Harrison Ford.
Well, I think, in my own personal opinion, and according to Ridley Scott, I think he in Ridley Scott's cut, he's supposed to be a replicant. And Ridley Scott
seems pretty
on
adamant,
record
without question.
He said in one of the special features, if you don't see that, you're a fucking idiot. He uses the word fucking in there. And there's scenes where, especially with the eyes, they use, you have the same eyes.
I noticed watching it this time that Holden has the eyes.
Well, maybe all Blade Runners.
Yeah,
maybe all Blade
Runners,
really and that's something that what's his face, Emmett Walsh knows,
Yeah.
And something also what's his face knows then too. I was going to say John Amos, but that's what's his face from
Edward James Olmos.
Yeah, James Amos is what's his face from Good Times.
John Stamos.
Yeah, John Stamos knows.
Well, this brings up a big question.
But like you said, Harrison Ford and Rutger Hauer are on the other side of the fence saying that He's human, and this question, there's a couple of the two big questions that were talked about before even signing on was the fact that the voiceover thing, and then Harrison Ford saying he doesn't want him to be a replicant. And Harrison Ford says he got a verbal agreement from Ridley Scott that yes, okay, he won't be a replicant. And then when this came out and it was implied that he was, it pissed kind of off Harrison Ford and Rutger Hauer, because Rutger Hauer agrees, because in their opinions it kind of makes it a moot point, their struggle at the end, and Harrison Ford's enlightenment by the end bit of what happens to Roy Batty, because if he is himself as a replicant, there's no real point to the resolution of the conflict there, or the character arc.
But having and I believe the writers, or at least Fancher, has said that to him.
Yeah, he loves it being ambiguous.
But to him he's human, but he loves it being ambiguous. So my question is, like, if we take filmmaking as an auteur medium, and Ridley Scott's certainly an auteur by any kind of examination of the art form, does his opinion really matter as a viewer?
Who's Scott's?
Ridley Scott's.
No, because
Ridley Scott says he's a replicant. Is that something as a viewer we should take, or should, because it's art, does the art maker's opinion really matter, or does art really, is it for the masses up to interpretation?
That's a philosophical point of view, then, because it's such a...
and I ask it to you, sir.
Yes. Answer. Don't wait for the translation. Answer me now. It's certainly one of those questions that if you leave it as ambiguous as they have, and you make a movie that's kind of like an art house movie, where not everything is spelled out for you, did Han shoot first or whatever, it is left up to like very polarizing points of view for people, where even, like we said, academics have wrote about this and wrote entire novels pro or con this concept of why is it thought that he would be a replicant? What is the benefits in the story, or vice versa? Why is he not a replicant in the story? I don't know if it's a tough question, because on the
I could just imagine a lot of filmmakers being like, "This is what Ridley Scott says. That's the way it is."
Yeah.
And my question is like,
well, you would think
does that really matter? Even though that's the artist's intent, but leaving it explained the way he does, which is somewhat ambiguous, even in the final cut version.
It depends on what you're talking about here. If it's a movie like this where it's left so ambiguous, and if it's left up for interpretation, I think then what you're saying applies. Maybe the artist creating the art doesn't have to have the deciding factor. But if it's a clean cut, like whodunit, like Clue, and and then like Colonel Mustard did it, and then you're going to tell me no, the butler did it because I think so, and I don't care what the movie tells me. Then you get into some problems.
I'd be interested to hear what people think about kind of that idea. If you want to contact us on Facebook or Twitter,
let us
this idea of does the artist's intent really,
or drop us an email too,
or drop us an email
at our site.
I'm just interested. I mean, one, what do you think? Is he a replicant or not a replicant? Two, does Ridley Scott kind of unemphatically, like, definitely undeniably stating that he is a replicant, does that really matter to
because
you?
We get into the different cuts of the movie here are brought in, because in the original version we have some pointers that he may be a replicant. Example, if I'm going to talk like Kolchak the Night Stalker, example, all the replicants love their pictures. And they're very like they're almost trying to create their own memories for themselves or have.
Well, I guess. I mean, that's something that's brought up a lot, and I guess we see that.
So that's where I'm going with this. Where she has all these photos. She comes over. She's like, look, I have a photo
of me and my mother.
Yeah, and what's his face? Byron James loves his photos.
But he loves his photos. But can we say that
now
that it's a replicant thing? I don't know.
Well, so then to further that along on Deckard's piano, he has a bunch of photos, and that, like you said, people say that it's that the memories of them being or not, the ones who don't know if they're real or not, they're
basically collecting memories.
Yeah, because
by collecting photos,
even on a subconscious level. And I noticed her photo is her sitting on the front porch with her mom, and there's a very similar, like the first photo you see on his piano is almost the identical porch with him sitting with a mother figure in the same position. Which is, that's almost questionable. It's a White House. They're on like a portico porch, and and he's sitting there. So there's that idea of he has the same likes, or he had of they do. There's the other part with the eyes.
That there's a part where we see her picture where it's still and then it becomes
it moves for a second. Yeah, and that's in the original cut too. So that's kind of cool that it's an effect that people may not notice. If you're not paying attention or on the first viewing. I'm trying to think of any other telltale signs that
you have
yay or nay.
You have gaff be like you've done a man's job.
So so then you get into the different cuts of the movie. So you have
there are other cuts that have more to that, but that's even in the theatrical cut.
Yeah,
where he says like you've done a man's job. Like, what does that fucking mean?
Maybe you're grown up. You did like
yeah, but it could mean
like you've done a
you're a robot, but you've
done what a man's a human's job, and then you have the origami of the
like you said, the eyes is a thing that people point to. They'll have like the replicants have this orange glow in their eyes
that you see, and you see that predominantly with the owl, and you have the origami unicorn, where in the original cut that's supposed to signify that Gaff had been there. And even though he was supposed to retire Rachel because she went AWOL, by saying that line, like, what does he say? Like, we all have to live, but he says that line, like, they just want to live, but who actually really does?
Yeah.
And it's repeated in Harrison Ford's mind. That gives him the idea, like, okay, let's run. They rabbit or they flee. And in the original cut, I guess it's supposed to be implied that Gaff had been there, decided not to go in and kill her, so he's almost letting them take off and flee. But then when you have the remastered cut or the cuts after that,
the director's cut, the unauthorized director's cut, and then the final cut, there's this unicorn scene. Yeah,
you have a unicorn scene where earlier in the movie when Harrison Ford's by the piano, he falls asleep and he's dreaming of a unicorn, and then at the end of the movie with that unicorn, the origami, that's led you to believe that, as Terrell said before, they know their memories because they're downloading them off a hard drive. That's why Harrison Ford knows the memories of Sean Young's character, about Doctor and stuff. One of those is Barbara Hershey's memory, evidently. What's his face? The first, what's his name? The first script writer?
Fancher, Hampton Fancher.
He was friends with Barbara Hershey, and Barbara Hershey gave him the story of when she was little, the spider outside her window and that happening. So that do they know his memories and dreams because of that's what he's trying to imply there. There's almost know something that we don't know. So what do you think?
I don't know.
Riddle me this, Batman.
I kind of like it. I kind of like it both ways. Like, I don't know if it needs to be answered.
You might know the final cut, the 2007 cut, better than I do because I haven't seen it since 2007. What is implied is the unicorn bit from Legend in that?
Yeah. And there's a question as to whether there's the rumor has always been that they shot this footage of the unicorn for Legend.
Yeah, they were doing tests.
And then
but even though they were in pre-production for Legend, they were still in post-production for Blade Runner, so they kind of used some of that money from Blade Runner that was left over, and they put it on the Blade Runner's budget, but it was actually tests for the unicorn.
But there are questions. There's dispute of that. The guy that works with, I think Ridley says, no, that wasn't shot for Legend. It was actually shot for this. That was my intent. The guy that seems like he, in the documentary Dangerous Days, seems like he's worked with Ridley a lot. The guy who seems like to be Ridley's right-hand man on the film. He seems to say, like, it was shot for Legend, but I think Ridley really
wanted to insert it.
Yeah, like that.
Did he
real
insert
intent
it
for it.
Did he Ridley insert it in that? He must have inserted it, even though he didn't personally. He oversaw the 91 cut, so he must have told them to put that in. No, like editor just gonna.
You know what? I've got this crazy footage. Let me put it in.
I'm gonna take something from he did from Alien and have Harry Dean Stanton. You know, so there must have been some sort
Harry
of.
Dean.
I know he just passed. God bless him.
But yeah, you know the unicorn thing is definitely in there.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is left to be ambiguous, even though Ridley has a firm position on it. Harrison has a firm position on it.
Now, there's other things I would love to talk about. I mean, just on a side note, because that scene that you brought up with Sean Young, my two favorite moments for Harrison Ford, acting moment when he's with Emmett Walsh.
Yeah.
And he's like, why would they risk coming back here? I don't know. There's something about the way he delivers that line that just, I love it. Like, it seems so natural. It's like my favorite piece of acting from him in this movie.
What scene is that? Is that when they're in the apartment, or is that the scene when they're watching the footage?
They're watching
in the smoky Citizen
yeah.
Kane
He's like, I don't
screening
get it.
room.
Why would they risk coming back here?
Yeah.
Like, what's the... It's just like the way he...
I find Walsh's dialogue in that kind of cumbersome.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of
because
weirdness.
when we get into the voiceover track, a lot of people talk about the issues they have with the voiceover track and Harrison's delivery, and I was looking that some could argue that you look at even Walsh's dialogue, some of it sounds cumbersome. Like for me, to talk about the voiceover, I hadn't seen it for how many years. I thought it completely worked up until that last bit. They needed to wait a beat or two for that last bit of
I don't even
monologue.
know if you needed that at all.
But I liked
about when Rutger Hauer dies.
Yeah, but I like
I don't know why he didn't kill me.
Who knows why he didn't kill him? You know, it's like he's wrapping everything up. But I like in the Workprint version, the monologue there. He says better. Because in the Workprint version, it's a couple. It waits a beat or two more, and then he says, like, I don't know how long it took him to die, but he fought.
Yeah, well, it's also like a better monologue.
Yeah, he's
a
like
better piece of.
You know, he's like he fought it, and he was there for the whole time, and you know, it took him a while, and I sat and watched, and then you know the dove thing, the dove goes off, and it's
I almost
touching.
You're right. In the Workprint version, the voiceover in that moment is just a better voiceover. I mean, it's better written. In terms of the voiceover throughout the movie, I'm kind of with you. I liked it. I don't know if it needs it, but I enjoyed it, and I almost feel like it doesn't work in the context of the movie because there's not enough of it.
Yeah,
like for stylistic purposes.
So what they do is very quickly when they want to turn this into a movie, they realize it's going to be very film noir. So we're going to have a lot of the tropes of, you know, what's her face looking like Vivian Leigh. She's going to have Joan Crawford's side shoulder pads. You know, she's going to have that haircut. He's going to be film noir with the Venetian blinds. You know, so it's very future noir. So one of the first things they realized is like in the earlier versions of the script, Harrison Ford had problems with the voiceover. He was like, let's have the character detect these and show it as opposed to
show it happening instead of
saying it, which was agreed to.
There was voiceover in the original script.
Yeah, but then they tried to do it. They showed the Workprint to test audiences. They didn't like it, so
the producers are like, this shit don't make sense. Yeah. Let have them explain it.
And what's his face? And Ridley Scott admits, like, I agreed with him. It didn't make sense. I agreed we did need the voiceover at that point. So he said, since we're coming at like it's a Philip Marlowe, Raymond Chandler-esque, let's have it be the private detective. Let's have that voiceover because that's kind of the idea we're going for. And that was the reason why it was put in to try to bridge the gap to some things, and then it was subsequently put in for the theatrical cut. I found in all the versions over the past years, the scenes like when he's looking at their photos and he's enlarging stuff, it's kind of confusing what's going on.
Yeah.
And then I found that after all those years of trying to guess of what's happening with the voiceover, he's explaining stuff that he's telling you
questions that you have.
Yeah, he's explaining that right away, like about the snake scale or this or what is that. And certain aspects about when they're in the car when he's driving in the spinner eating his noodles and they're going to the police station at the first scene, and you see that beautiful.
Did you watch? In your prep before we started watching all the all these versions, did you watch? There's like this alternate introduction that it's just like at some point of like in the deleted scenes, and it's where you see like the Holden scene where Holden's like in the tube.
Oh yeah, I watched the hospital.
But there's this whole introduction of the movie, and it's like when it comes down, it opens, and Harrison Ford's reading the newspaper, and he's like, "Yeah, I used to be married, but my wife ran off with some guy on the New World.
I hope she's dying."
It's like I liked that.
Yeah,
like it's like I felt like it needed more.
Oh, you're seeing so in the establishing shot in the rain when it comes down and you finally find Harrison Ford
sitting
reading his
against
newspaper.
the neon sign,
with that Japanese character. Yeah, and he says, and I was almost waiting for that. I got so confused with all we saw that I didn't realize.
That was my worry.
It's like what's in the version, what isn't?
Like I'm gonna get confused.
So that was I really liked that. Like because that explains away in the movie why he doesn't have a wife. He had a wife, she left him. As we said in the book,
it sets up like stylistically this idea of the voiceover being very film noirish, setting it up as a device.
And also, you don't feel bad then later on, which you could maybe in the book that he, even though it is a robot, he does kind of commit adultery on his wife in the book. In the movie, he's got an ex-wife. She's not even in the picture. It doesn't matter.
I almost felt what I'm saying, like other than the ending, which I don't like the voiceover after when Batty dies. Like I almost feel like it needed to have more.
Yeah, a little
for it
so
to work.
It feels a little more
instead of it just being like
sparse.
Feels dropped in those spots.
Yeah.
As opposed to like a more organic piece of the film.
Yeah, that's why with issues with the work print, I feel like I don't know who was cutting at the time because some of the stuff I wish they kept in. The scene when Holden gets shot at the beginning, I love when he goes through the wall and he puts his head down and you sit on it for a minute or two on the adding machine or something.
Yeah.
I love that bit as aside from the really quick cut in the theatrical version to the next scene, and then the thing with Pris dying against the wall. I liked a little more of her seeing her hit the wall as opposed to just an abrupt cut. So there was. I agree with you. I think they should have used a little more of the voiceover just in certain scenes because then you forget that you have voiceover.
Yeah.
And then suddenly, you know.
Whereas in the work print, I feel like there's only the end part, right? Has voiceover.
I don't even know if they have voiceover at all.
You said that the work.
I just meant for the cuts. Extending the scene where of the Holden getting shot. They cut on that abruptly as opposed to the work print.
But to my recollection, that piece of monologue that you.
You're right. It is. You're right. That is in the work print because there is.
That's the only piece of.
VO, because you see. Yeah, because there's another shot which I think is great too. There's a wider shot and you see the spinner come up between the two buildings, and that's not in the real version. And I love that. Have the spinner come up real eyes, then it comes off quickly, and then it must land, and that's where they pick it up in the theatrical version.
Now, to you, the significance of Batty saving.
Oh, it's brilliant.
His life, Deckard's life.
I think that's amazing because then it's almost like he at that moment realizes that was a lot of that Rutger Hauer's performance. He says was ad-lib. The part it was his decision to grab a dove. And I like the idea that he's holding the dove because he wants to tangibly hold like a life in his hands.
Yeah.
So he's holding on to that near the end, like he's trying to keep life. And then the idea he realizes because he's been killing people left and right, he realizes what life kind of is. So he purposely saves Harrison Ford because of whatever reason. I mean, that's even questionable. The morality of it.
This idea of he's not human, so he doesn't have a soul. But then this idea of the dove flying is supposed to symbolically be that he does. Have
his soul's escaping him because he's dying.
Now
that end monologue is amazing. That people have been quoting that to me for years about and I like that idea. There's that whole if you want to get into like symbolism about the eyes in the movie. There's like
but I kind of like this idea of. It has to go with the eye thing. He says to, says the shoe.
If you can only see what I've seen with your eyes. It's such great lines.
But then like the monologue at the end where he's like, I've seen things people wouldn't believe, attack ships on fire off the shoulder of Orion. I watched sea beams glitter in the dark near the Tannhauser Gate. All those moments will be lost in time like tears in the rain.
All Rutger Hauer.
Yeah. My question is, to me, this idea of, and I guess because I've been thinking about like immortality, been thinking about mortality a lot over like the last 10 years, and this idea of that we are immortal because the people we've touched. Even though physically we die, but in a sense we live on because of the people we've touched. We're remembered. Does he save Harrison Ford and tell him these things so that, in a sense, even though he's dying at this moment, he will live on. Harrison Ford will never forget him for this.
Yeah, he owes him one. Yeah.
Like Harrison Ford, and even in that Workprint, he says, like, I sat and I watched him die, and it took a long time, and it was painful, blah, 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 which we lose, which is actually a beautiful piece of voiceover.
Yeah.
It says a lot, it adds a lot to it, I think, which very few people have seen.
Yeah.
Heard that voiceover. But this idea of, in a way, saving him doing this one last good thing is one, yes, he appreciates life more than he's ever appreciated now that he's about to lose it. But two, by saving him, telling him, like, you won't believe the things I've that I've witnessed, like the life I've lived, not lived in a very human sense, and all of it will be gone the minute I die.
It's something that
me telling you this, me saving your life in some way, I will be
forever.
I will be remembered.
Yeah,
like I'll live on. I will now be immortal in a certain sense.
I feel like that's an issue, especially with our generation. We're starting to cope with more, or kind of wrestle with more than I think prior generations, for whatever reason. That we all want to be individuals and have this kind of make some sort of mark, but we don't know how to do it. And I think I'm with you where the past 10 years or so, I've suddenly realized with the aging of settling down, getting married, and getting into the next steps of your life, what do you want to do in your career, that mortality is something you suddenly realize that, like, shit, in 20 years, I'll be almost 60 years old. That's frightening, where I still don't look at myself as a grown-up. I still think of myself as a kid, and it frightens, I mean, I don't know if it's a pastime, but I like walking around cemeteries. There's a big one near where we used to live, Woodlawn Cemetery, that I'll bring my dog, and we'll, for a nice big walk, and you see all these tombstones everywhere, and you don't even know who these people are. And it's amazing to think that this guy lived for 105 years, but I don't know who the hell he is. And it's a theory that, of all people, Megyn Kelly told me about, where it's this thing where, like, it's like the Paul Newman theory, where you like a guy like Paul Newman who, he was a beautiful man, physically and as a person. He touched people's lives because he was an amazing actor. He was such a great philanthropist. He has all these great like Newman's Own products. He has this entire thing of
gives money to charities.
He has these all these different things that still go on. But he died maybe 10 years ago. In 20 or 30 years, people may not even know who he is.
He'll be like, that's the guy on the
on the box of something, because
on the solid.
You look at like 100 years ago, Lon Chaney Sr. or Mary Pickford, or what's his face? What's the great guy, the hunk that everyone loved, that he died at a very early age?
James Dean?
No, from the silent era.
Oh.
It's on the tip of my tongue. He's the real. Oh shit! It's on the tip of my freaking tongue. But anyway, it's like these people were so iconic and were so. Had such an impact then.
Yeah. But
for whatever reason, because people are ignorant, or just because these famous people have slipped the mind, that people don't know who they are anymore. So it kind of, there's a counter argument that people don't. It doesn't matter what you do, because in a generation or two, you could be the richest man, the most giving man, the most popular man. You're just gonna fall to the ends of time, because
eventually you'll be forgotten.
Yeah, by anybody, because your family's going to die, even in your family. In 3 generations, do I know who my great grandfather was? Not really. I may know his name, I may not know his name, but he lived a life, and because of him, I'm here. So it's kind of it's weird to think that there's this issue where the only way to have a immortality is either to leave something in movie form, in art form, in book form, in any kind of form. But even word of mouth isn't good, because once
in podcast
form, because once Harrison Ford dies, he's gonna, no one will remember Roy Batty to a certain extent. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What the fuck is that guy's name? Shit, it's on the tip of my tongue. He's the really good looking. Casanova kind of guy.
Valentino?
Yes, there you are. Rudolph Valentino. He was huge, and he died very tragically, and I think people were, it's like you said, like James Dean. I bet you today you went out and polled people, 20, people might not even know who James Dean is.
Yeah, they might know.
They might know
showed him a picture.
Yeah, they might recognize that guy. He's from a commercial.
Before.
or a gene ad. But so there is a no matter what you do in this world, in 100 years, people may not know who the hell you are.
Just his monologue, Rutger Hauer's monologue at the end is so great, and even by the writer's account, David Peoples, much of that was maybe not even ad lib, but come up with by Rutger Hauer.
Because I think
Rutger Hauer kind of like said that before they shot it. He's like, I have these ideas of things I want to say, and it's like
the monologue on the page was too clunky.
Yeah,
and people wouldn't get
parts of it, like the spirit of it's there, but then he just continued it on, and he came up with the idea of the
tears, and it's so apropos to what we're talking about here. Like the whole reason of this movie is these guys want to live longer to have a life, and the idea of people nowadays, you and I, who have 9-to-5 jobs, whatever we do. And people who are wasting lives, or the first world problems where you wake up and your car won't start or whatever, but at least you can eat 3 times a day.
Your internet's slow.
And it's and then you realize, when you're sitting there in a convalescent home when you're 80 or 90, did you waste your life worrying about bullshit? And I know personally that's a big problem I have, where I'm always worried about tomorrow, but then people say you got to live for today, and it's something to grapple with. So you have these story where it's these guys, they have a 4-year life cycle. They want to extend their life because suddenly the mortality is very evident. They don't know how to do it. And then when you get to the point where he confronts Joe Tyrell, and he's like, we don't know how to extend your life, because once you start, you can't be reprogrammed. It's frightening, So there is even though they are supermen, they're going to die. And how can you live in 4 years? But he's saying, look at the life I've had in the 4 years I've lived, I guess there are other bits of stuff we should,
the ending
touch on. Yeah.
Talk about the tagged on, quote unquote, happy ending.
Because of after the Workprint, it ends with an abrupt cut of him finding the origami, and he's like,
and
okay.
They go in, and the elevator door shuts.
And then that's it.
That's like the end.
So
which
people
I think
were
is
kind
a
of
great fucking ending.
Yeah, people were kind of confused, like, what the hell? So, which I don't really have a problem with.
No, to me, it's like
that last bit of them in the car.
It's like,
they don't say anything. It's just they wanted to have them driving out in the country, and then they're like, how are we going to do that? And Ridley Scott realized, and he was true that, like, I have friends with Stanley Kubrick. He just finished The Shining, the opening shots of The Shining. He didn't shoot anything in America. He didn't step foot in America because of his issues with America, and he shoots everything in England at that point. So he must have had rolls and rolls of film that was shot. So they borrowed some stuff from The Shining, which I didn't know. Yeah. And they shot Harrison Ford and Sean Young in the car on a flatbed driving through the woods of England, and they just had some dissolves between that.
And some voiceover.
Is there voiceover?
Yeah, because he's
because then he says he realizes
what Gaff
that
didn't know is that Tyrell told me that she.
And then people say that that's like a throw ending, but I find that believable, because if she's supposed to be she's supposed to be the first of the kind of replicants that didn't know she was a replicant or not.
Yeah.
If you take out the Harrison Ford bit, if he's a replicant or not, and if he knows, but she's not supposed to know.
The idea is that everybody thinks she has a 4-year lifespan, but she doesn't.
Yeah, because
Tyrell told Harrison Ford in private
and then,
that she's special.
Yeah, and then if she's
live.
the first one to have these implants, where he's like, my God, you're talking memories. So that why not, if she was supposed to be the embodiment of his daughter or his niece, maybe she would be the first one too that doesn't have this lifespan. That if they have the ability, unlike the book, to extend the life, but they just choose not to because they're worried about them developing emotions, maybe Tyrell did.
Because he's also like, we give them memory because it's easier to kind of control them.
Yeah, they don't just freak out. They don't just wake up. They have a basis of, it's the...
My thing is with I don't even mind so much this idea of that they leave to run off, but I kind of feel like if she had a 4-year lifespan, it would make that ending so much more powerful.
Tragic that she's going to die in 2 years, or
but it's like, we're going to go and make the best.
Well, because
we're going to go and we're going to make the best life we can in those 2 years.
Doesn't he worry? Isn't that? See, I've seen so many cuts of the damn movie. After Roy Batty dies, he runs home and he thinks she's dead, right? And he pulls the covers back.
It's because Gaff is like, he kind of hints like, it's a shame about the girl kind of thing.
Yeah, and he runs home, and first you don't know if she's there or not, and then when he pulls the sheets back, she's there.
He's expecting her to be dead.
Yeah, and then she moves, and he's a surprise, and it's a very subdued performance by.
But he thinks because Gaff might have retired her.
Oh, I thought it was because she might have. Oh,
maybe Gaff
ran
saying
out.
Like her lifespan.
Yeah,
is too
so
short.
he's worried. Oh my God, if his is just turned off, maybe hers will too.
But I could go with the ending where they're driving around in the mountains and the woods.
Yeah, they found.
But if it was like there was something bittersweet about it, which is like they get to be together,
but they have
but like they're going to make the best life they can they're really going to live for these last 2 years while she can still live.
And it's so
instead
tragic.
of being like, of course, who knows? Like she's fucking like Highlander now.
Yeah,
he's going to get old and die.
Yeah, exactly. And it's
she's going to be left alone.
Yeah, and the other thing is a little more believable, like people who have terminal illnesses or they're in a remission of a cancer or something, where it's like you're hooked up to a dialysis machine or something where you only have a certain amount of time to live, so you have to live. That's very tragic to suddenly realize your mortality, and then you're like, shit, what do I it's like the bucket list. Well, I only have 6 months to live. I have to do.
But I do have to admit, I loved the Workprint, which to my recollection is how the final cut ends too, which is it ends on that elevator door closing, because there's like momentum, and you almost like it leaves you kind of wanting like, more. What do they do? What's going on like, next? Is there going to be another one? Like it gives you an implication, even more so to me than the fact that we see that they drive away, that they're going to go live together. Even more so, like leaving on the momentum of them leaving with the door shutting, it almost implies that there's this whole other story that's going to happen. And like there's more adventure.
Yeah.
And for some reason, to me, it was more satisfying than.
Yeah, with the idea with all the cuts, I love that the producer of the movie, The Englishman, he says that the quote he says, which I think is great, he says the terrible thing about Blade Runner is that Blade Runner was made for people who didn't understand what the movie was about, and that's the reason why there's all this confliction of cuts and stuff like that. You have all these different ideas, and nowadays we see that all the time. And like where I work, on the 12th floor of my building, I can look out at night and I can look at Times Square and it looks like it's freaking Blade Runner. It's amazing.
Well, I have this like irrational thing where like I'm afraid to visit Japan because seeing it as a kid, seeing Blade Runner as a kid, and just seeing like those geisha,
and that was
and like him trying to order food. Like at first I'm like, I don't want to go to Tokyo because it's going to be just like Blade Runner.
People are going to be speaking city speak and all that kind of thing and all that kind of. And it's interesting because that was the thing that Japan was going to Asia was going to foreshadow us, and then it was going to be a blend of cultures, and that's why you have these big geishas. Like they say, like one geisha, she's popping pills in her mouth, and it's supposed to be birth control pills because she says something in Japanese. There's so much. We have so much condensed that we didn't talk about, like what's his face, Sid Mead, the futurist illustrator, and
their influences from Mobius,
who we always all the time
come up on the show,
and because of the French artist who worked on heavy metal, and they actually asked him if he wanted to work on this, but he couldn't because he was doing another movie, and he really regrets it now to do some of the concept work. But the idea of this is a great example of a sci-fi movie of an 80s picture, like we've been saying. It seems like this year of pre-CGI, and one of the only things you'll ever hear me say about the downfall of practical effects is all the shit that goes into it that you never see. And I mean the detail. Yeah. I mean, you look at, say, that blimp going by and it says Pan Am on it. It's, all these little things, the parking meters that say they're going to zap you. There's like Tit Job, or, there's all those magazines that you never see. There's so much stuff. Or when they're flying, you have the buildings, and inside the buildings they made, they put like the furniture in and people and lights, and it's so detailed, and you never see any of that, and I realize you have to overdo stuff to make it believable, but it's so sad that there's so much that goes into it. Like they had signed on, it's Sid Mead, I think they were paying him like $1,500 a day. And he worked on the movie for like 2 years, and all this. That's one of the reasons why they went over budget, because they're paying him like a retainer of $1,500 a day. So there's so much concept that went into this movie, and the beautiful, beautiful, just practical effects of the forced perspective with that opening shot and how they did that, and then the buildings. And we talked about the theory in Batman, the concept of the what do you call that? The urban planning, and the idea in the movie was that you had a lot of these older buildings, and they just retrofitted stuff on the outside. So I love that there's like older, it looks like Art Deco buildings, but there's tubes and pipes and all that kind of bit. Sure. You get the idea about the kibble from the book, the trash, because if you look at everybody's apartment, there's bits everywhere. Like the stuff is almost breeding on its own. The art direction's amazing. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's a gorgeous movie. They got the neon signs from the Francis Ford Coppola movie, One from the Heart That Flopped. That's where Tom Waits actually met his wife, Kathleen Brennan, on that movie, because she was like a script supervisor and he did the music for it. But they had all this neon signs. They got so like especially the cowgirl in that scene. That's from her. I mean, Joanna Cassidy in this movie, I completely forgot that we just did Roger Rabbit a couple months ago, and that's the same Joanna Cassidy in this movie, and she's so gorgeous in this, but it's her body type in this movie is so much like she's a pleasure model, but she is an assassin. You have that like, perfectly cast, and it's amazing, which I think we just touched on maybe a month or two ago that we talked about that like when they did the 2007 cut, they had her reshoot the stuff, and she said that she loved how she was still able to fit into the the older 25 years on.
We talked about Roger Rabbit. There was talk that instead of Linda Carter, they talked about casting her as Wonder Woman.
Oh yes, Joanna Cassidy. Yeah.
And then we see her like in this athletic.
Yeah, and she's amazing. And I mean, there's so much. I mean, I feel like we can almost do a part 2 about it because we have so many notes that we didn't even get to. But like the DP, Justin Cronenweth, he was developing like Parkinson's on set, and by the end of the shoot, he was in a wheelchair, and they had to really help him with stuff. And it's just there's so much in this movie.
I recently came back from California. When I was in California with a friend of old roommate of mine and an old friend of ours, I got to go.
We brought him up on the cast
to the Warner Brothers lot. And I've been on the official tour, but here's like we kind of got this private tour of the Warner Brothers lot. So walking around this like New York City backlot street, which is where they shot all the exteriors, except for the Bradbury building and a couple of the driving scenes. It's kind of it's amazing to see what it's like on an everyday basis, and then juxtapose it to like how much fucking work they did.
And it's just all the money that goes into
make it Blade Runner.
And they said that there was there's always strikes, and there was some sort of union strike, and because of that they had an extra amount of pre-production time, and that saved them. So they had 9.5 months of pre-pro, and they were able to really use to develop storyboard, and that really helped them develop all this stuff that they ended up having, that strike. And that's amazing, just all this preparation that goes in. And just sadly, you look at all these special features, there's so much in this world you never see. Like I said, the parking meters are supposed to electrocute you if you don't do something right, or all the little stickers and the signs in Japanese and all this detail.
But I recommend if anybody goes out to Hollywood and if you're going to do a studio tour, I recommend the Warner Brothers one. I've been to the Paramount tour, I've done the Sony tour, I've done the Universal tour. I love the Warner Brothers lot and their tour. Totally worth doing. It's a little pricey. This time, like I said, was more like of a private. We just kind of walked around, the two of us and his friend, which was awesome. But at the end of the tour, the official tour, there's this museum that has the Central Perk Friends set, like coffee shop set, and it's actually a pretty cool little museum as you walk through it. It takes you through each step of the filmmaking process. But in that museum, as you walk through towards the end, they have the miniature of the blimp.
Oh, really?
You can like see it in glass.
Well, in Queens, you've been to the same place, the
Museum of the Moving Image.
Yeah, they have the pyramid.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
You know what I mean? I went to see the Muppets exhibit there a couple of years ago, and they have the pyramid building there, and that's amazing. And then the spinner car is
it used to be on the MGM Studios.
Oh yeah,
Orlando.
Right, yeah, the backlot tour, which I had. Yeah, that was sitting there, but it's now permanently like in Seattle,
next to the Rocketeer.
Yeah, they had the Dick Tracy cars from the Dick Tracy. They had the spinner car. They had a couple other,
the Bulldog.
Oh yeah, the cafe from Rocketeer. And it's another thing in the movie too. You realize that only police kind of had the spinners, and other people just drive regular cars. But if you're rich enough, you can get a license for kind of a flying car, and that kind of seems realistic in the future.
Which is like that's the idea. It's like we see Tyrell in the pyramid, but we see these big buildings in the background that were beautiful matte paintings. But the idea of like if you're rich, you really never go below the 60th floor,
which is another theme that we talked about in Soylent Green.
Yeah,
the chaos on the actual and the dirt and the filth, and that's something even I think in the fourth Night of the Living Dead movie, the what's that?
Oh yeah,
Land of the Dead.
Land of the Dead.
That's like Dennis Hopper and all the elitists are living in like an enclosed tower, and then they don't ever have to.
But that was kind of the idea. Was like regular people live at street level, but the rich live in because of the flying cars. They never actually have to go below.
Yeah, they just
the 60th floor of a high rise. They all live, a mile above everybody else.
Decker's gun is a real gun. It was like a double trigger bolt action rifle that they just cut the stock and the barrel off of, and it was heavier than a real gun, and it shot something crazy, like a 5.56 millimeter bullet. And it was thought to be lost for 25 years until some private collector surfaced with the original, and it sold in 2009 for $270,000. Our quick what if game. The original screenwriter wrote, because we were talking about film noir, he wrote the original script with the idea of Robert Mitchum playing the role of Deckard, because he kind of saw, the film noir aspect, and Mitchum
was old by then, but still capable.
Yeah, he could have done, in the 70s he might have been able to pull it off, but he's in great, Out of the Past, and he's in a couple Philip Marlowe movies in the 70s, and he was thinking also of Sterling Hayden playing the Tyrell character, and even when Philip K. Dick wrote the book, he was thinking, if it was ever adapted at the time, he was thinking of Gregory Peck playing Deckard, and Grace Slick playing Rachel, and I forget who his idea of maybe it was Sterling Hayden was his idea of of playing Tyrell. And the what if game, they were talking about Dustin Hoffman briefly, because they were looking for like a different look and a different idea of going at it.
Yeah,
and
like a not typical leading man.
Yeah, and they were entertaining, and he was talking about it for a minute, and they thought Gene Hackman, Sean Connery, Jack Nicholson, Clint Eastwood, Paul Newman, Tommy Lee Jones, Schwarzenegger, Pacino, Burt Reynolds, and they also, with what's her face, Daryl Hannah, they had some real famous people that actually auditioned and didn't get the part.
Yeah, there were a couple of. For Rachel, they had this actress named Nina Axelrod that I think is significant for sleepover movie fans, because she's in Motel Hell and Critters 3.
Yep.
She's also in a movie that I happen to like called Roller Boogie.
Yeah.
And for Pris, one of the people that you can see on the special features you can see some of her screen tests is Stacey Nelkin, who is a Saturday Night Movie Sleepover alum for Halloween 3.
Yeah.
But also, I think worth noting that a friend there are authorized sequel books.
Oh, yes, that is definitely worth. Friends of Philip K. Dick did sequels in the 80s.
A friend of Philip K. Dick's named K.W. Jeter, I guess, was given permission by the Dick family.
Dick was really against, because he read a first draft of the script. He hated it. He thought it was stupid. But then he read people's version. He kind of liked it. And then before he died, saw previews. They cut together
20 minutes of footage,
special effects, and he loved the world. He said, "Oh my God, it looks great," as well as he thought that Harrison Ford. He's like, that's who I always visioned as Deckard. So he was kind of. He died, I don't know, maybe a couple months before the movie actually came out in '82, but he signed off on it.
Yeah.
But like
so
you're
eventually,
saying,
I guess in the 90s, they got published anyway. It was Blade Runner 2, The Edge of Human. Blade Runner 3, Replicant Night, came out in 1996. And then in 2000, Blade Runner 4, Eye and Talon, which I guess these are sequels to the book, but they also start, to my best of what I could find, since I didn't read them yet, start bringing in things from the movie, kind of bridging the book and the movie.
And bringing in other characters and stuff like that. I mean, they did a video game in the late 90s, too, and they brought back James Hong. They brought back Byron James, Sean Young for voice work, and even maybe Omos, I think, in it. And there's even like sequels, they're calling it. And that Soldier movie with Kurt Russell, which I've never seen. Remember that world?
Yeah.
They say that is supposed to be within the Blade Runner world. Like
I have seen that movie many times, but I never kind of.
They said it's like a sidequel, and then also in the Prometheus Ridley Scott movie, when they were doing the special features, the little things that came out to promote the movie, there are mentions in the Weyland Corporation of Tyrell, so they're kind of connecting the worlds of the Tyrell and.
I also will say, because I just watched the live action version of Ghost in the Shell with
just so many
what's her face, but I knew some of the older animes from the 90s of Ghost in the Shell, and I never read the manga, but it's so fucking
Blade Runner.
Yeah, you can so see the influence of Blade Runner.
You brought up my thing, Neuromancer, William Gibson, before. He said, I think I said this before, is he went to see Blade Runner, and he was like, shit, this is exactly what I have in my head, so he had to change it. But I think his book is very lesser known to the novice, but him and Blade Runner are the two books in the 80s that, like you said, his book coined cyberspace, and that really gets you Matrix. But the two of them together, Blade Runner the film and his book Neuromancer, really begets that whole cyberpunk, Matrix, future, Ghost in the Shell, the animated movies of the 90s. You have a lot of influences there from...
I will say that part of my research, I found there's this great site called brmovie.com. So instead of Blade Runner, brmovie.com.
B. Arthur?
Movie.
Yeah.
And they have all kinds of answers to frequently asked questions, but you can download earlier versions of the script and read them.
Oh, we should put a link in the site.
Yeah, but in case you don't make it to the site, you can always look that up, but we'll put a link when we post. Paul M. Salmon, you see a lot in these special features, and he does commentaries for them because he was a writer for the magazine Cinema Fantastique, which is a favorite of us sleepover movie lovers.
Yeah.
And he was hired to go and do a write-up on Blade Runner, and that article that he started writing ended up being expanded into the book Future Noir, The Making of Blade Runner.
Oh, that's one of the first quintessential.
So we see him a lot in not only the special features of the DVD set, but in any other documentary you might find on YouTube or whatever. And also worth noting, and I wish we started doing the actual research because I would have had this in time for this cast because I just ordered it. And I believe we might have brought up the Marvel Super Special issues as something in the past, but there's a series of Marvel comics where they put out these big issues, and some of them are Star Wars or Empire Strikes Back, Raiders of the Lost Ark. There's a Blade Runner one where the cover is done by Steranko, and it's a 45-page comic book adaptation.
And we were just talking about Steranko.
Because we talked about him in Raiders of the Lost Ark for doing concept drawings.
And then John Alvin did the theatrical poster for the Blade Runner proper movie.
Yeah.
And people know about the notorious problems Harrison had with Ridley Scott on set.
Scott had with the crew.
The crew, that's the whole T-shirt thing, which if you don't know, we don't really have time to get into now.
So much to cover.
Yeah. Dara Hannah just saw the Werner Herzog Nosferatu, so that's the idea of her painting her eyes black for that scene.
Yeah. I think
Frank Lloyd Wright was a huge influence of his Nighthawks painting as well as his architecture. That's why you get a lot of that. They wanted to make, especially Deckard's apartment, seem very claustrophobic with all that kind of like stonework and stuff. And then you see that a lot in the Tyrell room as well, and all that light too. We talked about that in the Warriors too, where they talk about, if especially if you're doing something like on a scale as this and you don't have the budget, what helps you get away is a lot of smoke, have it shoot it at night and have everything wet.
Yeah.
And that was the DP and everybody lighting guy. That's their whole art of getting around stuff. Like, it's just the visual effects of just saves money and makes stuff look better. It's just,
And I will say as many problems and questionable craziness of Sean Young. I've always had a crush on Sean Young, and I think it stems from this movie.
Yeah, she's great. And then a lot of people have problems with her, and Harrison had problems with her work because she was inexperienced, and she, you could tell she's uncomfortable in the outtakes.
Like her first thing.
And really, Scott had to really coach her in each scene of what he wanted and stuff like that.
Saw her and said, aesthetically, that's exactly what he wanted.
Yeah, he saw her. He said she looked like Vivian Lee, and he kind of wanted, to have that
I think she's gorgeous in this,
and
I think she's great. What I was going to say, my other favorite scene, where I said when Harrison Ford delivers the line, like, what are they doing?
Yeah.
My other favorite scene is when he's telling her, like, about her memories. He's like, you ever tell anybody about that? You ever tell Tyrell about the spider? And, like, the way she kind of breaks down. He's like, it was a cruel joke.
Yeah,
I just love that.
He's half into it, and then he's half like, forget about it. Or,
For, like, an acting scene, I love that scene. She's so good in it, and he's great in it. I love him.
Yeah, and then Ridley, too, has had such a sad life in a sense of, like, his older brother died of skin cancer around this time, and he was in pre-pro Dune, and then he left it to do this. And
because he wanted to jump into something more
fast-paced.
He wanted something to
get his mind off of it.
Yeah, he just wanted to work, and Dune was taking too long.
And then his idea, this was great for him because about the idea of mortality and stuff, and what had happened to his brother who had died. And then we know now, recently, a couple of years ago, Tony Scott committed suicide. So that's really tough, I'm sure, on the whole family. I don't know. There's just tons of other stuff that we just, we don't have the time to get into.
Hopefully we gave you a kind of an angle on this that other people don't discuss, and hopefully that angle wasn't too confusing.
No, especially, I wholeheartedly recommend the book,
Yeah, like I said, I didn't care for the book, but I would not tell you not to read it. I think it's worth reading, especially if you're a fan of Blade Runner. It's totally It's a worthwhile read.
And they did.
I just didn't particularly love it. But as Dion stated, maybe if I read it next year, or if I read it a few more times, it might grow on me.
Like they did a great comic book adaptation of the entire thing with his entire text, and I think it won an award. Maybe in 2010 they did it, 24 issues, and it's in an omnibus. At the end of the book too, that Buster Friendly guy, it's really confusing. He admits to everyone that Mercerism is fake, so you don't know where this is going. If it's government run, why would they say this? So there's a lot of other problems that go in.
I read that it's like he feels he's in competition for humanity's mind.
Yeah, so he's trying to just,
So he's trying to.
But you think there'd be some sort of some sort of regulation, since they're the only two striving things that they're controlled kind of by the same person.
For another podcast.
Yeah, and then it gets so sad because at the end of the book, he. That's what I wanted to say too. The one thing I had a lot of problems with the BBC thing that we have a link to, but at the end of the BBC thing, he says, "I went home and I threw my electric sheep off the roof," and I felt that was such a cop out because I don't feel like either the book character or the movie character would do that.
Yeah.
Because the whole point of the movie is that he's getting empathy for these androids and these robots. So he would say because at the end of the book he just gets so disinfatuated or just whatever for life. He leaves and he goes and becomes kind of Mercer in a scene where he's talking to Mercer. He's going up the hill and then he realizes, what the hell am I doing? I should get back. And then he finds a toad and he's so overjoyed and he comes home and he's look what I found. Like we said about the spider, I found a toad to his wife, and he goes to crash and his wife flips the toad over and she finds a circuit board. She opens it and they find out it's fake. And who the hell knows how it got out there, but it's indeed a fake. And then so she calls at the animal company, "Hey, my husband is has a toad, and we want to take care of it because he absolutely loves it." So I find it completely disingenuous that in the radio play he would go home and throw the thing off the roof. The last bit I will say about the book, which I thought was really cool, was we talked about the idea of him sleeping with Rachel and then her messing with him and telling him about. So after he retires the first couple things in the book, he goes and gets that goat. And he gets this beautiful goat, and the wife's like, "How are we going to pay for this?"
He buys a real goat.
He buys a real goat and to replace the sheep.
His whole motivation for taking these jobs as a bounty hunter is he gets $1,000 a head to kill these androids, and then that money will give him enough money to buy a real animal.
Yeah, and aside from it being a status symbol, he also hopes that it will help his wife, boost his wife out of this depression. And it does.
Something real.
And she's over the moon that they buy this goat, and it's so fucked up that he leaves to go retire the rest of them. He comes home after he retired, batting all them, and you find out that Rachel, after leaving him and sleeping with him and having the whole confrontation where she reveals that she's fucked everybody else for the same motivation, she comes to the thing and throws his goat off the roof.
They keep their animals and their electric animals on the roof
because that's the only place you have a little area.
So she comes and flies her car onto the roof and she
throws
throws their real goat off the roof.
It's so fucked up, and it's almost like a very vindictive. Yeah, it's another bitch. So it's another great aspect I loved about the book, that it's just there's so many things that I wish could have translated, but you can't. But maybe this begs the question that maybe they can turn this into a series like they did Westworld, and if you had 10 or 12 episodes, you can explore all this and much more. But knowing people nowadays, they'll completely do a whole different fucking thing. You're like, well, just do the book like it's supposed to. Don't do something else. So
why you
sons of bitches? So yeah, that's it. It's and if you, like we said, if you like what we've been talking about, you have the original book to read. You have the graphic novel that is actually the complete text, so you're not losing anything. You have the bridge version, which is the BBC radio play that we'll put a link to.
We apparently have this 1982 Marvel Comics adaptation of the movie itself.
And you have the box set of over 6 or 7 movies, including the freaking Dangerous Days, 3.5 hour doc, plus all the other docs on it. So you have a lot of stuff you can go dig in that we just did.
There's a pretty decent BBC one too that you can find online on like YouTube and Vimeo. That was done for like BBC television in like 2000 or early 2000s.
Yeah,
that's worth seeing before the final cut.
It's really all of it's
all
really
kind
good
of stuff.
And then all the questions, the ambiguous questions about stuff. I mean, the only swear in the movie. Does Rutger Hauer say father or fucker to him at the end when he's killing Joe Turkel? I love Joe Turkel because I don't see it. Evidently, I didn't realize he's in Paths of Glory. He's one of the guys that puts on trial the Stanley Kubrick movie, and we see later on he's the bartender in The Shining, So it's a small cast, but it's a great cast, and I think everybody was beautiful in the movie. And we've we've talked about it before, but the actor who played Sebastian, he pops up in, remember the Batman animated series episode with the with the robotic, the robotic replicants in that. So it's really good.
Yeah, great cast.
Overall, I think everybody did a great job, and
love James Hong.
Yeah, he's great. He comes out. He's in a big trouble in a couple years.
And every movie ever made where they have an Asian.
Yeah, they need an Asian guy. I see your eye. I made your eye. So it's really. Do you think he dies in the movie? Yeah. I know they say in deleted scenes they say they find his body, but I didn't know if that's supposed to mean he whatever. But we hope we've done justice. We
tried to take a different angle. Hopefully that angle with juxtaposing against the book didn't get too confusing for you all.
But we always try to do a unique angle, so we're not just the same thing out there. But as we said, there's been so much written and talked about this movie. There's entire classes and books done on this, and
so this is a little different kind of episode of Saturday Night Movie Sleepovers.
There's so many analytical aspects, but we like to compare source material like we did with the Warriors,
or we like to compare
the movie cuts,
novelizations,
novelizations as well, and tell you what's going on in there.
Sometimes have scenes from
explain stuff that don't make it
cuts, earlier versions of the script. Great score.
Yes,
by Vangelis,
which wasn't out for 10 or 12 years, and that's kind of upsetting to think that like that. It's a really good score, and I think you couldn't get your hands on it. There was bootlegs of it for years until like the early 90s. They finally put that sucker on, I think, their album or whatever. It's a synth score, but it's really an example of that, that 80s decade of that kind of synth scores and stuff like that.
It's a beautiful score.
Yeah, and it complements the movie very well. And, it's very good. So we're over the 3-hour mark again here, so thank you very much. We hope we haven't woke my parents up again.
Yeah.
Because they're not going to let us come back. But, in a couple weeks or even next week, we have a huge
we're diving into
Halloween extravaganza. We're going to scare the poops out of you. So we hope you come back if you dare on another episode of Saturday Night Movie Sleepovers.
Later.